Good afternoon. We would like to call this meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Kingman City Council held on Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Let's turn some time over to our city clerk, Annie Meredith, for roll call.
Mayor Watkins.
Here.
Vice Mayor Samily.
Here.
Councilmember Pat.
Here.
Councilmember Savage is excused this evening. Councilmember Scott Staley.
Present.
Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation tonight will be given by Jessica Cooper from the Hope City Church, after which can we stand for that and also remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilman Ward will lead us in that.
If everyone could please bow their heads. Father, we just praise you and we love you, Father. And we thank you, Lord, that we can come together and have this meeting, Lord. Father, I thank you for all the men and women that are here that you've appointed that hold these positions, Lord, that are making decisions over the women and the men and the families of Kingman, Arizona. I pray, Father, that you would give them new ideas, that you would give them fresh vision, and Father, that each one of them would leave a legacy for the future of this city. Father, I pray, Father, that they work in unity with each one of the city heads, Lord, and that all of them together, Lord, would accomplish your purpose and your will for this city. Father, I pray that there would be no selfish ambitions or no discord, but Father, they would come together in unity, Father, and work together for the good of the people. Father, I pray over this agenda, Father, and I pray that everything that the people that are here, that are bringing before the council, Lord, that they would be able to articulate and be able to say what they need to say to get their point across. So, Father, we praise you, we thank you, we ask you, Lord, to set your angels about this building, Father. We ask you, Lord, to protect this meeting, and we pray all of this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Once again, welcome everybody here in chambers, and of course those who might be viewing through the internet. The council may go into executive session for legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-431.03A.3 to discuss any agenda item. The following items may be discussed, considered, and decisions made relating thereto. Item number 1, appointments. 1A, Parks, Aquatics, Recreation, and Golf Commission appointment. The Parks, Aquatics, Recreation, and Golf Commission currently has 1 vacancy. 1 application from Hannah Inman has been received and provided for review to the council liaison, city manager, and staff. Residency and voter registration status has been verified. Staff is recommending appointment of Hannah Inman to a term ending on December 31st, 2026. Vice Mayor, I think you were over this commission.
I am. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that I did look over Hannah Inman's application and was very excited that she had applied. She is looking to be more involved with the community, so I would be happy to make that motion, unless she's here and would like to say a few words.
She is not here.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Hannah Inman to the Parks, Aquatics, Recreation, and Golf Commission.
Can we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 2, call to the public. Comments from the public. Those wishing to address the council should fill out request forms in advance. Comments from the public will be restricted to items not on the agenda, with the exception of those on the consent agenda. There will be no comments allowed that advertise for a particular person or group. Comments should be limited to no longer than 3 minutes. The council may not respond to speakers during the call to the public. The council may direct the city manager to study the matter or request that the matter be placed on a future agenda. This afternoon we have Mr. Larry Sturgis. Larry, would you like to come forward?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Larry Sturgill. I am a resident and voter here in Kingman. We have a situation with speeding and noise in our neighborhood, and there's 3 assisted living facilities within a 3-block area. This is on Detroit Avenue. This has been going on for over 2 years. We don't seem to have enough law enforcement in that area. It's become a real problem. Most everyone there is end of life or they're disabled, or they're very elderly. And they're out on scooters, walkers, canes. They're walking down the street, and it's just a real problem. We need to address that. Something needs to be done.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
Thank
And
you.
forgive me for pronouncing your last name wrong. It's Sturgill.
Sturgill.
And I said Sturgis,
Yes.
so forgive me for that.
That's all right.
Okay,
All right, thank you very
thank
much.
you for coming to council. Christopher Miller?
Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Miller. I'm a teacher with KUSD. I'm here today to ask for the reinstatement of the men's adult basketball program with the Parks and Rec. So 2 seasons ago, it was suspended. I guess there was some fighting or behavior that maybe wasn't appropriate, but those players have been like banned from doing it. But ultimately, they ended up banning the whole program. And I don't really understand why, because I understand that there was a few bad folks doing bad things, but they were removed. But 99% of us, we really enjoy it. So it was a really big part of my week. Between just being a dad and being a teacher, just going and being able to play basketball with adults and be a human being for a little bit meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to a lot of the guys. And there's a lot of guys that wanted to show up tonight, but a lot of guys had to work. So we're just asking that you guys look into reinstating that program. I think it's ready to come back, and I don't see any issues why it can't, can't come back. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. And as I read before, our city manager has heard these things, and he will report back to council about it, so thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Item number 3, consent agenda. All matters listed here are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Council, I hope all of us have had a chance to take a look at all this. Items A through P. Is there anything that needs to be pulled or discussed?
I'd like to pull in.
Item number N. Okay.
I'd like to pull O.
And item number O. Item letter O. Okay. Anything else? Can we get a motion then to approve everything on the consent agenda except for letters N and O?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Councilor Walker.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull this because I think it's a big deal. We've been waiting a long time to get this started. And I know this is, looks like the residential side of it, not the arterials and collectors. And I just thought it should be pulled off the consent agenda. And then I'd also like to encourage staff for the future. I know we've talked about it, but I would really like to see us try to buy our own equipment so we can be chip sealing in the future instead of subbing it out. But to get this project kicked off, I understand why we are using subcontractors. But that's all I have on that. I don't know if anyone else had discussion on it or.
Mr. Cooper, I forgot to read that since he pulled that. Do you want me to read that?
It would be appreciated if you
Okay,
just.
I'm sorry, Councilor Walker. I should have
That's
read
okay.
that first before I turned some time over to you.
No worries.
So let me read it real quick. Residential District 1 crack seal. This item is for consideration and approval of a job order contract for crack seal in Residential District 1. Mojave County has agreed to chip seal residential roads for the city of Kingman, utilizing the existing work share intergovernmental agreement. The anticipated start date for chip sealing work is in September, including just over 30 miles of streets. Additional positions presented to council would not be filled in time to ensure all prep and crack sealing is done before the start of chip sealing. Residential District Chip 2 chip seal is planned for fall. Prep and crack sealing will be completed in-house once through the winter, pending additional positions presented to council. This work is being completed utilizing the Kingman Street and Drainage Maintenance Job Order Contract. Staff recommends approval. So Councilor Walker, everything you brought that to everybody's attention. I appreciate that. That is important for the public to know. Can we have a motion, or is there any
Jack,
comments? Yes.
Could we just have Jack come up? Since this is an item, since it got pulled, and this is an item that's so important to our community, Jack, do you want to tell us a little bit about how this works? They're going to be out doing 30 miles and then chip seal, and then how many more miles after that in phase 2?
So, good evening, Mayor, Vice
Right.
Mayor, members of the council. So, the first district, the maps that was provided in the attachments, shows the first district, which is just over 30 miles. That would start pinning now. The contractor's been working out a schedule for all the work they have coming up with us. But this was, call it the capstone to that, so they can finish what they're doing, because they'll have to roll off of the projects that are starting currently directly into this phase of chip seal to make sure all the work's done before our project with the county starts up in the fall. Right now, we're tentatively slated with the county to start in September. And so 30 miles is a pretty significant amount of crack seal. I think that was like 350,000 pounds worth of material that was going on the ground. So we just, staff-wise, to make sure all this happened in time to get the first phase done. That's why we went with the contract version. In the future, pending the budget that you guys are going to speak to later on this evening, there was some provisions in there for us to buy equipment and provide additional staffing, assuming those are still in that budget, to allow us to do in-house. So that moves us into phase 2. District 2, rather. We broke Kingman into 6 different districts, and then 2 more for arterial collectors. Again, that's almost 30 miles, but we would crack seal that in-house through the winter and into the spring, and then look to have that chip sealed in the spring as well.
Very good. And those new employees, those positions that are still in the budget that will be hired, their job, they'll be focused solely on streets, is that right? So that year-round you'll have a crew that'll be able to patch and
That's correct.
seal
Predominantly,
and
I would say
fix.
that, we have major storms or anything else, we pull from everywhere.
Yep.
And that group would be the same. Mr. Foggin and Tina have actually set up another org for that group, so they have their own line, so we're tracking them specifically.
Very good. I think people will be excited to see all the road work that's going to happen. Well, and then they're going to be upset about it, but we're going to see a lot of improvements in the very near future. Thank you, Jack.
Yep, thank you.
Jack?
I had a question as well, Mayor.
Right, yes, we'll continue. You brought up one important thing, which all of us need to always remember, is the monsoon season. On the one hand, we hope we have a wet monsoon season. That could cause some kind of delay in what happens. So we always need to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. And that's true for us and the county. Between the two of us, we have a pretty significant number of miles of roadway. And that is the one caveat that the county did tell us. That is why I say tentatively, that's a pretty solid date with the county or start time. But again, that is weather dependent.
Vice Mayor Stanley?
I just had a couple questions, just for the public's knowledge. Can you identify where District 1 is, and can you also tell us why District 1 was selected? Not necessarily because it's number 1?
So it is because it was number 1, but it was labeled number 1. That district was actually identified and actually had proposals on the table when the TPT was repealed, and we did not have the funds to complete that district. So out of all the districts and the maintenance we've done, that is the last pending one. Outside of that, other districts, we tried to lay it out based on the last time they were treated and some other factors. But for as far as where it goes, generally speaking, from I-40 north on the west side of Stockton Hill. But we're going to get some of that stuff up onto our GIS system on the public side so people can see when those are where they're at and where they sit in those districts.
Thank you.
Well, Jack, you're just popular tonight.
All right.
Councilor
Jack,
Wood.
on that September start, if anything does come up that prevents the county from doing that, there's nothing to prevent us from using contractors, is there?
Funds. We did put some money in, and that was in that write-up. The county would not be able to accommodate us for the chip seal in the springtime for District 2. And so, some of our pricing has been favorable, and we have some other things working in our favor from some of the work we've done. And so that sets us up to have that work contracted. So if we did that, we could have a contractor come in, but a big portion of that's going to be timing. When we get into those seasons, we're looking way ahead. So I don't expect any issues. I say that weather hits you when you don't expect it, I guess. But even if it pushes our start date, you're looking at roughly about a month worth of work for that chip seal. So we looked, and I say we, Mojave County and us, the city, have looked at September, October as those times. So even if we do get pushed and we don't start in September, I'd still see us hopefully getting that work done in that October time period. We still have good temperatures to achieve the breaks on the material.
Okay.
Anything else for Mr. Planty? Okay, thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
We had a motion, we had a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor,
Yes,
we don't have a motion and second on that.
I thought we did.
No, we had some discussion.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll second that
there
motion.
we go. Now we have the second. Thank you. 4A, old business. Ordinance number 1952, short-term rental. Yes.
Oh, and consent.
On the consent. Oh.
The agreement for the third-party project management.
Oh, I thought I'm sorry. Okay, let's do
We're
that.
all just a little confused tonight.
Yes. I thought, Keith, you were making the motion for O also. For N. Yeah, I know you did for N. Correct, I know. Okay, yes, Vice Mayor Samley, would you like to make a motion on O on the consent?
Nope.
Well, I do have some questions, but would you like to read what O is?
Yes, I guess we should. It's one of those nights. Agreement of third-party project management for dross remediation. City staff is recommending third party to represent the city as a project manager that is knowledgeable and experienced in large environmental cleanups. And the cleanups would be best to oversee the dross remediation construction phase of the project. Staff contacted Orion Managed Services, LLC, to provide third-party project management services for the dross remediation. City staff has negotiated the scope of work and fees with Orion Managed Services to represent the city in ensuring quality assurance, reviewing invoices for accuracy, and provide other project management services. Staff recommends approval. Doug from our airport.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor.
So my question is, I wanted to pull this just for clarification because I had a question. So I thought anytime I have a question, the public may have a question. I just wanted to make sure that these third-party project manager that we're going to hire to oversee the project was not in addition to funds that were already allocated to this. And I also wanted to know if we knew what that cost was going to be. So number one, I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to go over and above what we had approved, cutting into our 60-40 split of the reserves. And then number two, I didn't know if we had that number and knew what that was.
No, ma'am, this does not go into those funds. We did this as a separate fund. Coming out of the airport general fund, or the airport enterprise funds, and the purpose of this was to make sure that we actually have somebody that could sit on the project, keep eyes on how much loads, the reports that are coming in, to make sure it's being done properly, correctly, because we only have one shot to get this done. We do estimate that it's going to only be about that, roughly that amount for the project management, $399,000.
So the airport's going to pay for that? Are they going to, is the expectation that they will be reimbursed for that, or just out of the kindness of their heart?
If anything, if it comes down to it, if we have additional funds left over from the actual draw site, then those funds go directly to the airport, besides the litigation fees, and we'd use some of those funds to help pay that off. But for at this time, all the funds for this project have been deliberately taken out of the enterprise funds separately from the draws funds.
Okay,
Okay, a little bit extra clarification. We did budget for this, not anticipating for it to come or be directly a part of the DROS funds, the $52.5 million. We actually put this as separate.
Okay. So we have the 52 and a half. We have the contract for them to remediate. Then whatever's left over, less legal costs, is going to be a 60-40 split. So you're telling me that that's not going to, it's going to come out of airport funds, it's not going to come out of the 60-40 split?
It comes out of the airport funds, but the 60-40 split
It's going to go back into the airport?
to the airport, yes,
Okay.
ma'am. So
All
it's kind of a little bit of a
Sure.
shift.
That's what I wanted to keep transparent for the public. Thank you.
And could I just point of discussion with that was, we had brought this up with DOJ when we were negotiating the settlement, and it was their position they weren't going to pay for us to hire somebody to do a project management or a manager, because that would be essentially the responsibility of the city. If we didn't have the staff to do it, they were going to say they're not going to pay for it. So it's something we tried to do, but it didn't work out, so.
Okay.
That's all for me.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay, council.
I'd like
Vice
to
Mayor,
make
would you
a-
like to make a motion then?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve item O on the agreement of third-party project manager for DROS remediation.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'm just trying to speed this meeting along. I apologize. Item 4A of old business, ordinance number 1952, short-term rental regulation. Council directed staff to draft an ordinance regulating short-term rentals upon the passage of SB 1168 back in 2022, codified as ARS 9-500.1.39. This allows municipalities some limited regulation of STR. The ordinance, as drafted, requires an STR to get an annual permit similar to a business license. As part of this process, the owner is required to provide their TPT license, proof of notice to the adjacent neighbors, and emergency contact information. This ordinance will assist the city in ensuring that the proper taxes are collected and any potential nuisances are addressed. Staff recommends approval. Manager Foggin?
That would be me,
That's
actually.
Mr. Cooper.
So as you may recall, I think it was November when I originally brought this forward and got some direction from council. I had it prepared to bring back to council probably January, but then the state legislature had a bill that could affect it, so I felt it was best just to wait. I realized I didn't tell you that's what I was doing, so I apologize. I didn't tell you I was going to wait for that bill to go through process, but it's that bill failed, so this is where we're at now. So the plan was for this, if council agrees, was for it to go into effect October 1st and then have basically the last quarter of this year for sort of an educational period with the enforcement action taking place, if needed, the 1st of July or January. During that educational period, that would allow folks to be able to register their properties, get information from the city, and basically be prepared to get this program up and running. The finance department is currently working on making sure the forms and educational material are ready, and I think they'll probably have it ready soon. But this just gives them some time to finish it up while, unfortunately, they're still going through the budget process, so they're just kind of doing some extra tasks. I don't think there's anything too different in this since we talked last time, but it seems like Councilwoman Staley has a question.
I have a lot
Okay,
of
Councilor
questions,
Saylor.
but you
Saylor?
ready? Okay.
Yes.
So I remember talking about this, and we only had very few requests, what we wanted in here, and we wanted to keep the bureaucracy out of this process. And then this ordinance, it's 11 pages long, and it has what I feel like is a lot of extras. It's more than we had asked for, and I also think that maybe some things are missing that would help alleviate what really most of your neighbors get very upset about. So I'll just go through my list of questions.
Sure.
My first question was, where is the form? But you said it's not ready yet. How much is the permit on an annual basis?
That'll be determined by council when the council adopts the fee schedule, which I think finance is preparing.
Okay, so that is not part of the ordinance. It will be
Correct.
separate.
Correct.
Okay, and then as we go through some of the requirements, I don't see anything that specifically says that you cannot do a vacation rental with like an RV that's parked in your yard or a shed, the kind of things that you do see in other cities, people doing.
Yeah, it all refers back through what's allowed per zoning and what's allowed under the definitions under the state tax levels as well as the state statutes. So it's going to be basically a dwelling unit. But if you feel that this is not explicit enough, I can definitely put more stuff in there if that's something that there's a concern. But that's definitely the background information that's there. So
Yeah, I would prefer that it said, you know, it has to be a home. It cannot be a mobile unit because there are plenty of cities where you can go and rent the RV that's parked next to the house.
right.
Those RVs don't have, you know, proper hookups to deal with sewer or any of those kind of things. So I think we should be very clear that an RV should not be allowed, or a shed or anything else. It has to be an actual home that you pay property tax on.
Yeah, I will.
So I would just say that would be, you'd want it to say estimated or an ERU, because I know there's been, well, at the top of the hill, there is a set of, I think, 3 or 4 Airbnb units that are not home, but they're, I mean, I think they would qualify under what you're describing. So I think we probably have to take a little bit different approach than calling it a home, because we know there's Airbnb happening that aren't directly tied to homes. So,
Well, that's right. That's in the commercial. You're talking about the new Airstream.
no,
park?
I'm talking
No.
about the Hilltop Motel. The units that they remodeled are all Airbnb units.
They're a
But
hotel as opposed to a house.
Yeah, it's a hotel commercial. Wouldn't that be
It's-
different?
It's Airbnb.
Okay.
They're not running it as a hotel. They're actually renting those through Airbnb.
So it seems like there's got to be some kind of language that we can specifically talk about in a residential area. Somebody's renting out their home.
Correct. And
It
that's
cannot be an RV parked in the backyard.
Well, and I think that you bring up Tin Can Alley is, we're going to have to be pretty careful about the
Right.
language there, because we certainly wouldn't want them to build and then be
But that's
out,
also in a
so-
commercial area, not in
Yeah.
a residential. So I
Yeah.
could see how Carl can figure this out.
Yeah, I just, you know, as we're talking about it, I just want to make sure that we're not just talking about homes, so.
and I'm going back to the statutes to try and figure out what the exact definitions were. So for the lodging accommodation, it is any hotel, motel, inn, there's other references. Tourist home or house, dude ranch, resort, campground, studio, bachelor hotel, lodging house, rooming house, residential home, apartment, dormitory, public or private club, mobile home, house, trailer, at a fixed location. So that's going to be the definition of what is allowed per statute.
So you can rent out an RV.
I'm going to say a house trailer. I don't know what the house trailer actual definition is, but that seems like it's probably going to be an RV, yeah.
Can we make it stricter?
No, unfortunately. We're only, this at a fixed location, but let me figure out how I can better define what a house trailer at a fixed location means. It could be like a park, a park model type of thing, as opposed to an RV.
And that would have hookups,
Right.
because
So
the
let me-
question always
yeah.
is what are they doing with all the waste
Yeah.
when they have people living full-time in the RVs?
Well, and you bring up a good point too, because a lot of homes have an RV hookup, and a dump area where they can hook their hoses up to dump on the side of their home. But are we going to allow that also as an Airbnb?
Yeah, it's questionable.
Okay, that is one thing I will try and get a better definition of what a house
Okay.
trailer at a fixed location is.
Okay, and then in the next section about the owner getting the permit, it was added that they need evidence that they're registered with the assessor's office.
Correct.
What do you consider evidence?
Whatever paperwork the assessor's office will issue. This again is part of the state statute.
That they have to do it? Or just they
Yeah,
have to
that's,
be?
that they're going to have to do it because I believe the assessor's office is going to classify it in potentially a different manner. But
But why
I don't
would-
work for the assessor, so
But
I
why
can't
would
tell
we
you.
check that? Because that's a county issue. When we leave that up to the county? Because really all we cared about was that they were paying their TPT tax and that the neighbors had a way to get a hold of the owners if there was an issue.
I would say that there are items that we have to check for the county
Okay.
that we are, I can't tell you specifically, this is going to say that's exactly what it is. I know that's part of the statute, but there are things that we do verify or are required to notice the county for, especially the assessor's office when it comes to property, because they need to be able to assess whatever the property values are for taxation purposes.
Okay.
Counselor Saley, you bring up a good point, though. It's also along the lines of, if you can use a travel trailer, how's a county assessor going to have anything to do with a travel trailer?
Yeah.
And the travel trailer, it may have to be, like I say, a fixed park model. That may be what that definition means. So it's not something I had considered.
I think as part of cutting some of this red tape is that it's up to the owner to notify the assessor, and that's between them and the county.
it
And we
is.
shouldn't have to ask for proof, just like the next one. Why are we asking for proof of citizenship? Like, it's just another piece of paper on the form, and then they've got to provide, it's more red tape.
I don't write the bills, and the reason that our state legislature, I don't want to use the word is hung up on people being citizens of this community, but that's just
Why?
almost every document that I work on or contract, there's always something jumping in about citizenship.
Sure, if you're applying for a job or, if you're getting a driver's license or something, you're proving citizenship. But this is just to have a vacation rental. And I'm coming to this from the position that I used to have a vacation rental
Right.
for years. And down in Bisbee, it was a pretty simple form. I paid $12 and they just wanted to make sure I had fire extinguishers and, the
Smoke detectors?
thank you, smoke detectors. That they just want to make sure it was safe. So back to just making this a simple process.
I will see if I can drop that.
Okay.
I will do both the assessor and the citizenship. I'll have to look into it and see if that's what council wants me to do.
Okay. And if it's the Arizona law that they need to be a citizen to have these, then again, that's just, why do we need to double check? We should make it simple. Okay. So then my concerns about what most neighbors complain about are when, like in Lake Havasu, and I don't think, as far as I know, we don't have problems with any vacation rentals here the way they do in Lake Havasu. But what the neighbors are upset about in Lake Havasu mostly is that people rent these homes and then they party all weekend. And they make a lot of noise and they have cars all over the place and make a mess. So when I look at the rest of these rules, and there's lots of penalties, it's really expensive, $1,000 penalties every 30 days. But I don't see anything that says that we will take your license away or your permit if you have multiple noise complaints after 10, if you're having parties. Because I did see that it talks about holding special events that require a permit. But if I have a party at my house, I don't have to have a permit.
Correct. The penalties, you're going to hear me say this a lot, are what the state statute allows and only what they allow. We can't do more than that.
Right.
So if you're asking about like the noise complaints, if you
No.
read through those penalties where you get suspensions, that there's some, let me find that
So I'm
section.
not worried about making them higher. I thought they were pretty high. I'm talking about, I don't see anything in the compliance with the law that talks about you'll lose your permit if you have multiple parties at this residence, or, you know, if people that are staying at your residence are getting ticketed for minor consumption or having parties, noise after 10, barking dogs, parking. Those are the things that we want to kick them out for.
So part of my suggestion would be to lobby the state legislature.
So there's not a
So
ability
the
to do
permit suspension
that. Mm-hmm.
is a felony offense committed at or in the vicinity of the vacation rental by the owner or the owner's designee, a serious physical injury related to the vacation rental with knowing, intentional, reckless conduct. I'm just allowing a sex offender or sexually oriented businesses, prostitution, or the vacation rental owner or designee knowing or intentionally allowing the rental unit for a special event that would otherwise require a permit or license pursuant to the city code.
So that's all state law.
That's all state.
But you have to put it in this, you have to put it in this ordinance?
Well,
Or we just could
if you want me to take out,
assume?
if you want me to take out all the penalties or how you can assess
No.
penalties, we can do that.
I guess I feel like there are a bunch of rules in here that we're probably not really going to prosecute people for, like the topless dancing, right? How are you going to know if there's a bachelor party that's not making any noise? Well, they're going to make some noise, but they have topless dancers inside. We're not going to prosecute that. How would you know? How would you get inside to bust this topless dancing party? So I have problems with having laws that we're not going to enforce or we just can't do anything about. But then this ordinance doesn't have anything in it about what the actual neighborhood would like it to say, which would be we can do something, we can shut down this Airbnb if it becomes a nuisance to us, which would be more about the parties, the parking, the noise, the maximum occupancy, those kind of things. So there's nothing we can do? Is that what you're saying? That's not an option?
Right, we can't shut them down. The law before this was basically stated we couldn't do anything. We couldn't regulate yeah, if there's a noise violation happening, law enforcement can show up and tell those people to keep it quiet. We can also contact that owner, definitely. But this ordinance is based on what the state is allowing, and as I noted in my job description, it's a limited amount of regulation deliberately by the state.
Okay, so in the permit suspensions, three verified violations of this article within 12 months, but not including such violations based on aesthetic, solid waste disposal, vehicle parking, that is not also a serious threat to public health and safety. So that does not include noises and partying. One verified violation, which is the felony offenses by the owners or serious physical wrongful death. Will we be doing background checks on these people before we give them a permit to see if they have any of these felonies or have a previous sex offender registration?
I mean, when we're going through the permitting process, they can check the sex offender registry.
Will we do that?
Yeah, there's limits on how far you can go. You can't do a full egregious criminal background check. That's not allowed, but you can definitely check public records that are available.
Okay, and then the owners of this home, before they rent out the property, they are also expected to do some kind of background check.
Right, and I think the online folks generally do that, but maybe some, I think, yeah, my understanding is Verbo and Airbnb do run through those.
Yeah, I don't think we hold hotels to these standards, do we?
I'm bringing.
It's just a question.
You're just asking me. I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm as frustrated with it as you
Uh-huh.
because it very much is limiting what you can and cannot do, and it's very specific in what's there. what happened when this statute was passed is the city attorneys got together and drafted a model ordinance. This is the ordinance that folks are adopting. Close. I mean, there's things that you can drop from it that aren't here, that are some of the, I think when we had talked, there was some specific, there was a requirement to post on the property in the model ordinance where they had to post that they're an Airbnb.
Right. We thought that was
We didn't want
unsafe.
that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a frustrating process when you're
Mm-hmm.
working within the confines that don't necessarily get some of the results that we would prefer to try and address some of those neighborhood concerns. And I would say our issues with it are probably much less than some of these other cities that are really heavily affected.
Right. Yeah, I can see, I don't anticipate anytime in the near future getting a boom of these Airbnbs here. We have a lot of hotels, and we're already short-handed on housing. So I guess one of the biggest things was to make sure about the RVs and the sheds so that people aren't adding to their property. But then the rest of this law just seemed probably not helpful to us.
And the council doesn't need to approve this. If you don't want this, you don't have to do this. This is just information that's out there.
Right.
So.
But the law, I mean, you're saying this is a state law. It's in effect no matter what, correct?
No, it's a state statute that allows us to create an
adopt it.
ordinance, correct. And
But we
in
can't do
that,
more.
We can't do more. We have to operate inside those confines, correct.
And it didn't sound like there was much you really wanted to cut out of it as far as
No.
strictness.
Yeah, it was
So
more about.
you wanted to add more
I
strictness
wanted
to it.
I wanted to protect the neighborhood, and I wanted
Right.
to make less work for staff where they weren't checking the assessor's office or citizenship, those kind of things. It didn't,
Well,
don't seem necessary.
and I would say the staff isn't going to check the assessor's office. That would be the applicant.
Yeah,
The same
well,
with,
it's still,
yeah, I know it's work, but it's, the citizenship issue, I believe, is, a driver's license.
Okay.
It's not like you have to have a birth certificate and a passport, so.
okay.
I don't think we plan on going way overboard in some of that.
That's why I was hoping to see the form. So I don't know, I think the points move, it doesn't help our community, and I don't know.
It does sound like we need some clarification on a couple items. So should we table this and move it for a later date?
So what I have for potential clarification is going to be that house trailer fixed location.
RV,
And
she
then-
shed, he shed.
Right.
Okay.
And then if I can drop the assessor requirement in the ID.
Just to make the form
Yeah,
is simple
that's
and the
fine.
process simple.
And like I say, I know Tina's group is working on that, and
Okay.
she's here, so she can hear that we want to make it as simple as possible. And I know you had some questions about, like, the fines and penalties, the way they're drafted. Again, it's not, this was kind of a crafted, this is what we can do. And when you're looking at, you talk to some of the bigger cities, Paradise Valley, I talked to their city attorney about this, and it would be, they rent out their homes for 20 grand a night. So they don't care about $1,000 fine. So
Sure.
That's why the fine kind of gets tied to the rental price. It's either the 1,000 or tied to the rental price. That's how you kind of address those concerns when the property is rented out at a much higher rate, so.
Okay. I'll make a motion to table this item.
Mayor Watkins, before.
Yes,
the
yes, I was going to ask
May I
you,
ask
Counselor.
Sorry, yeah, I'll let you ask a few questions.
Counselor Pat.
Just one.
Sorry.
We don't currently have a short-term rental regulation, do we, Mr. Cooper?
No.
So this would be adopting our own where we currently have no regulation.
Correct.
May I make a comment?
Of course, continue.
As Ms. Steely notes, and I believe she's accurate, there are currently no problems with vacation rentals. And as this discussion has gone on, it's become quite apparent that the ordinance, if we adopt it, is either too limiting, or if we do adopt it, too intrusive with too many regulations. The way I look at this is just another way to regulate, get the foot in the door of a house or a property owner, just another way to tax and another way to penalize. I think that instead of tabling this, we should just kill it now and leave our city the way it is until problems with rental regulations or short-term rentals, appear. There's no reason to even have this on the book in the first place. You know, I like quoting Thomas Jefferson. I'd much rather be exposed to the inconveniences of too much liberty than that of too little. So let's take the vote. Let's kill the bill, and let's move on.
Nice, thank you for that comment, Councilor Pat. The problem is if they're running it as a business, that they should have a business license. How are you going to verify if they have a business license? And secondly, for example, when we have home rentals in the city of Kingman, I think it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carl or Mr. Foggin, if you have more than 3 home rentals, you have to pay sales tax when you rent that. That's on a long-term rental. Is it 3 units?
3.
Tina's
More?
nodding her head.
Okay, so once again, but you're running this short-term rental as a business. You know, we all have to pay taxes as business owners. So yes, we don't want it to be too intrusive, but there has to be quality also because they are running it as a business. So
Mayor?
I appreciate your comment though. Vice Mayor Samley.
Do we know what the anticipated sales tax revenue, the TPT from putting this into practice? I'm kind of along the same lines as Counselor Pat. If it's not even going to be worth it, why do it? Maybe,
We just don't know how many Airbnbs there are actually in the city. So,
and at what rate are they charged?
so they would be charged at the Airbnb's 2.5, right? Are they-
Hotel tax?
They're the
The bed
hotel
tax?
tax?
2.5? Okay. So 2.5 per, based off the rental?
Correct.
Come on up, Ms.
Tina Moline.
So because they are overnight stays, they are treated like a hotel, so they would pay the 2.5% plus the additional 4% bed tax that we collect for taxing purposes. And although I have an idea of what we collect from just Airbnb, I cannot share that information because it is just one specific business. So, but as far as just individuals who are renting their homes, I do not know. I do not know if we are currently collecting from those or not.
I'd like to know that. Is there a way to quantify that?
There's a way that we might be able to extract that data.
Okay. Before I make a decision, I'd like to know what we're leaving on the table by not doing this.
So I don't know that I'd be able to provide that information unless I knew which homes were being rented.
And can I just, the point
Yes,
of
Mr.
clarification
Cooper.
is, it's not just me renting out my house. It has to be going through the online marketplace defined as a third-party, non-associated with that property business. So it means it's not just me putting it out on Craigslist or something, renting
Right,
out.
which
It
is what
has
most
to go
people are doing
Right.
if
have
you're
to go
running it
through,
like a business.
Right, going through
Correct.
Verbo or Airbnb.
So
So I
you-
would suspect you're probably capturing most of it anyways, but I don't know that for a fact.
So you can't give us a general?
I would have no idea which properties out there are actually being listed
Well,
as.
from the Airbnb, just off of Airbnb.
The
because
online
it's
ones,
one-
like the company ones, like VRBO.
Right,
and-
right.
okay.
They have Airbnb, VRBO.
So as far as the number of properties that are listed with Airbnb potentially, is that what you're looking for, Vice Mayor, or?
We could start with that.
Okay, I can try to extract some data for you.
Okay. All right.
I think it sounds like we should need to just table this and bring it back
We-
after we have some more information.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we not?
We do from Counselor Staley.
I think you have the motion, but I don't believe you have a second.
No, we don't have a second yet. So, because I know Counselor Pat wanted to make a comment. Any other comments? Counselor Ward or Walker?
My concern was, will it be treated like a motel with bed tax? My concern was, will it be treated like a motel with the bed tax?
Okay,
Because I know, I've talked to a few hotel owners that that's their concern, is
exactly.
they're paying it, why aren't the Airbnbs? So that's my concern.
Once again, back to business owners, those who, most of us have our own businesses, and it needs to be a fair playing field. So we have a motion to table this item and bring it back at a later date after some numbers are put together, and clarification from Mr. Cooper. Do we have a second on Counselor Staley's motion?
I'll second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Item 4B, contract modification for the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway Environmental Assessment. This item is for approval of a contract modification request for MAECOM Technical Services Incorporated for the Rancho Santa Fe Environmental Assessment Contract. The environmental assessment, EA, is required for construction approval of the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway on the federally obligated airport land owned by the city per the National Environmental Protection Act and the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, Environmental Handbook. Comments received from the FAA for the draft EA required added additional scope to the project. The attached contract modification is for time and material. Portions of the work have been completed to ensure progress on the EA continued. Additional funds are included in the contract modification to address potential comments from FAA legal. Any funds not required for completion of the EA will not be billed. Staff recommends approval. Mr. Planti.
Good evening again. That was a pretty lengthy summary. When you read it out loud, it didn't seem that long when I dumped it in there. So as the summary states, there was some additional work based on some of the comments, some changes and things that have occurred related to the NEPA process and FAA requirements required that work. As well, trying to navigate through some of that, Mr. Foggin had set up with us and FAA to actually do some all-day meetings and really push to move that along. FAA was very accepting. They were actually awesome to work with in that and caused a great deal or helped with a lot of momentum in that. And so they did have to do some additional work related to air quality modeling. There was noise, lighting, there was some land use. A lot of the issues were related to floodplain and water quality issues. And so really I figured there'd be some questions on this, so we wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask those. But two of the other items that they were working on, one we have back is a draft of the perpetual use easement, which will ultimately be used for that section of the airport property. So we can build the road and then convey that for maintenance. That's actually drafted, it's going through review, and that'll go back out to them. And at some point, council will see that for approval and then ultimately onto the Board of Supervisors as well. And so I know one of the first questions out of the gate is going to be, where are we now? So I'll try and catch that early. The document was turned over to the FAA regional, aka their legal side. So there's two pieces to FAA. There's the airport district office, which is in Phoenix, that we work with, and then all those EAs go off to their legal team. They reviewed that. We were actually supposed to have comments back from ADO because they won't directly give us those comments. They kind of reword those and hand those off to us due to the FAA's regulations. And so those are actually due back to us right now from the airport district office from Phoenix on the 23rd, so this coming Friday. Talking to them, they won't give us a lot of information. They said there's some minor changes needed, but nothing looked too significant. So with that, I'll try and answer any questions you may have.
Council, any questions for Mr. Planting? Vice Mayor.
Oh, I'm just having a hard time. It's like one more contract, one more. So these items that we are now going to pay no more than, what is it, 85,000 for?
$210.
Yeah,
believe it was
somewhere
88.
around there. Are they things that were not? Are they unforeseen? I read in here that the scope was bigger, so that's why all this other stuff comes in. I'm struggling.
Yeah, no, so a little both. So AECOM has done a significant number of environmental assessments related to federally obligated property. That was one of the reasons that we opted to work with them, plus are very familiar, obviously they're the designer for the parkway itself. There were some specific items that were listed in the proposal, in the original proposal from AECom. Use one example as air quality modeling. So in there, they were going to use a specific air quality model. They were going to use moves, and FAA, we went through the process for determining the environmental level required for this document, and that was listed in there. When we came to that point of the model, which was completed, one of the comments was that there were some outdated pieces to that particular model they used, and so they wanted us to use a different model, unless Arizona Department of Environmental Quality would buy off on us using that model, would approve that use of that model. So we spent a decent amount of time. Doug is on the no-call list in Phoenix for ADAQ now, trying to chase down that approval, which Doug actually received from ADAQ. So once we brought that back to FAA, at that point they looked at it and says, oh wait, no, it has to be published. And so there's been changes within their regulations, and I believe there's a little more scrutiny for whatever reason on those. The ADO has been very helpful, especially we went back and forth trying to work some of these out, but the meetings that Mr. Foggin set up for us to work collaboratively really made a big difference in that progress. The meetings themselves were a significant amount of time that everybody spent, but the consultant and FAA, and we would actually go to Phoenix. We'd all crowd into the conference room for AECom, and we went through the environmental document line by line, page by page, making edits right there with FAA, working with us to correct some of the issues that, or get the document to a sufficient level that they felt it would make it through their legal team. In supplement to that, we were going down there weekly. We were doing virtual meetings as well, so we had short durations between while we were making those changes, and made, again, a significant amount of progress, but it did take a significant amount of time from our consultant.
Okay. Yes.
Other questions? Jack, is this sort of along, I know this was explained to me too. FAA gave us a list of what their requirements were. We met those requirements, but then when you actually met with them in person, they said, well, this is what we put in there, but we would like this to see this, this, and this. Is this because of this is part of solving that problem?
Yeah, not to throw them under the bus.
I'm throwing them under the
Again,
bus.
there's two sides to FAA.
I'm driving the bus.
Yeah, trust me. Work at the airport, it'll be fun. Yeah, that's not what I thought. Airplanes and runways, yeah, that's not been any of that. So, back on topic, yes, it's addressing those items. Again, air quality was a specific item. What is, I guess, semi-unique to this one, we're building a road through airport property, so most of FAA's processes are related to airports and air traffic. And so it's going back and forth because we make a determination going back to the proposal and the original environmental determination level. We base it on FHWA and roadway standards, and then FAA is digging around because, again, that's not something that necessarily falls in there. So to answer your question in short, yes, it does solve we think it should be A, and then when they dig into it with their legal team, that's not what fits that objective at the moment, and we've had to make changes.
Yes, Councilor Staley.
I agree with Vice Mayor. I mean, we're just getting nickeled and dimed to death and extra hurdles. I know that Supervisor Lincolnfelter had contacted Mark Kelly's office for help with some of this. I'm wondering if we've ever approached GOSAR to see if he can't reach out to the FAA and say, hey, lighten up, this is a great project, it's great for Arizona's economy, let's move ahead. We know the project's going to move ahead. Why are you, making it more expensive or delaying it with all these extra hurdles?
So Jack, that's a question for me.
Perfect.
So
That's what I
we
was gonna
have talked to GOSAR's office, we have talked to Cinema's office, they had representatives down in Phoenix at our meeting with the FAA monitoring progress, and we ended up with a really productive meeting. And actually, I guess it wasn't GOSAR's, I better not misspeak because the representation,
Yeah.
it was Senator Kelly's office and Senator Sinema's office that was there. And we actually had contributions from Dr. Coral Evans in that meeting, based on her experience as mayor of Flagstaff and dealing with the FAA as well. So they have been extremely helpful and they have been watching. They're aware of this project and waiting for any changes in rules that are not acceptable. So I would say that we've established that, and they have been really good to be supportive of this project.
Okay, but they haven't been able to make them more cooperative with the project.
We still have to follow the rules. It's just if we're being asked to do something outside the rules, they stand ready to be able to step in Washington DC, and talk to the FAA leadership there to make sure that happens. And we haven't, since that has occurred, we have not had any issues.
And then I just want to clarify, have we reached out to GOSAR's office to get support, and he's not?
No, Penny, I've talked to Penny
Okay.
about it, and they're more than happy to help as well. Just at the
Okay.
time, it was the two senators.
I
that-
just want to clarify who
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, it's two senators are there. I've talked to Penny Pugh as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can we have a motion then approving 4B contract modification for the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway Environmental Assessment?
I'll
So
make
moved.
that
Oh.
motion.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Thank you,
second
Councilman.
that motion.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Under 5, new business, we would like to take care of item 5B first, if that's all right with council. 5B, consideration of a variance request to connect to sewer. It's engineering 23-0065. Staff has received a request for a sewer variance from Mario Halo and Gloria Jeffries for a parcel located at the southeast corner of Louise Avenue and Diamond Spur Street within Rancho Santa Fe subdivision. The parcel is currently vacant and is zoned R120. The applicants plan on obtaining a building permit to construct a single-family residence. Section 4.2G of the utility regulations requires the property to connect to the public sewer system when sewer is available. This property meets the criteria for a sewer extension. On May 25th, 2023, the Municipal Utilities Commission voted 4-1 to approve the variance request. Staff recommends denial of the sewer variance request. Our city engineer, Phil Allred, you are being tapped on.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. As mentioned, this is a variance request to our utility regulations for the requirement to extend sewer. And just as brief background on the property, this is in the Rancho Santa Fe subdivision near the intersection of Diamond Spur and Louise Avenue. If you look at the screen, the existing sewer, it ends right here just before Louise, and the property in yellow is the property in question. So normally, the utility regulations would require that this property, when they obtain a permit, to extend across all their frontages. And so that would include, normally it would include Louise, Diamond Spur, and Pinto. When we were looking at this, we determined that there was no benefit to extend along Louise. And so what the requirement would be is that they would need to extend the sewer along Diamond Spur across the frontage, and since it's a corner lot, they would also have to extend across Pinto. When we look at variances, we look at a few different things. We try to determine if this is, a unique situation that would warrant a variance, like if it would create maintenance issues or something like that. Another thing that we look at is if the variance would create a precedence that would nullify the code. And so we want to be careful of that when we make our recommendations. And then also if it's in line with the overall goals that have been set. And so in the past, the goals have been to extend sewer in as much opportunity as possible. When we look at this, we look at long-term, not just the short-term. And so our goal has always been to extend sewer when we can. And I think the reasons behind that are, there's some environmental reasons. It's better environmentally for us to take the sewer and to treat it to a higher standard. And particularly since we also have the opportunity to recharge it directly into the aquifer, we're very interested in doing that. So we want to get as much connection as we can. And then the last is, the more customers we have, the better we're able to spread the expenses across the customer base. And so in the past, that's what we've looked at. And so this did go to the Municipal Utility Commission, and they voted to approve the variance request. But for the reasons I outlined, we're still recommending denial. So those are the main issues that I wanted to bring up. I know that the applicant is here as well. So if you have any questions, be more than happy to answer them at this time.
Council, any questions for Mr. Allred? Vice Mayor.
I do. I have a couple. So I see in the snapshot you have there of the map, looks to be 2 properties that are unimproved in that area. Are there any more within the vicinity that we cannot see?
Probably none that would be of benefit for this discussion.
Okay. My next question is, if the variance were to be approved and sewer does not get extended, and we have a septic that fails in that area, what happens to that individual? Because this is an area of Rancho that has been there for a number of years. It's in the older phase, I'm imagining.
It is.
So tell me what the process is for someone that has a failed septic in this area where there's no
So in the case of a failed septic, the first thing we look at is how far away are they to an existing sewer line. And in the case of a failed septic, the threshold is lower. So if they're within 250 feet, they're required to extend. So that's something that was done some time ago by a previous council. Normally, the rule is if you're within 500 feet, you have to extend. But in the case of a single-family home that is experiencing septic failure, if they're within 250 feet, then they still would be required to extend.
Okay.
If they're not within that 250 feet, then it's up to them to figure out what repairs or measures that they can take to get their septic system back up to where it needs to be.
Okay. And then my final question is the cost to the property owner to bring the sewer. I mean, I'm understanding that there's going to be a hard cost to them, obviously, but I'm also understanding that the city would pay for the pipe because we're looking for a certain...
So there's a provision in the code that would allow participation by the city, but only for the short section on Pinto, and that would only be for the material cost, meaning the pipe cost.
Sure.
Everything else, the asphalt and everything else would still need to be paid by the customer.
Okay. And so do you know what the cost for this individual to bring the sewer over to their property?
It's always a big guess, especially now. My guess is it's going to be somewhere in the $30,000 to $40,000 range, but
Okay.
we have a contractor in here that might give us a better idea.
I would be interested, just for clarification purposes, to know that that's the figure.
Yeah.
So, okay. Those were my questions. I'll save the rest for discussion.
Oh, Mr. Allred, too, I have a question. So how many total feet are we talking about, that extension that the city wants?
So, because it's a corner lot, it's a little bit longer. If I remember right, I think it was 250 feet. So they're only about 80 feet away from the sewer, but since they have to go around the corner and they're on the, they would also have to cross Pinto, I think it was somewhere around 250 feet.
Okay.
Huh? I'm not 100% sure. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
But it's longer. I can remeasure it if need be.
Okay, that's important. For clarification also, if I remember right, all these properties to the south of Louise are on septic.
Correct.
And everything to the north of it, of Louise, the newer part of Rancho Santa Fe is on sewer.
Correct.
Okay. So, for example, that was brought to mind too, that other empty lot there, what will happen to that one if someone wants to build on that house?
If this does not get extended and if they're within 500 feet, then they would have to extend, the rule would be that they would have to extend across their frontage.
So it would be the same thing that we're talking about.
Right,
They would
if
have
they're
to extend.
if they're within 500 feet,
But if this, for example,
which I think they would be within 500 feet.
okay, and of course, if these people are asked to bring, not forced, that's a tough word, asked to bring the sewer to their lot, then of course that lot right there could tie into where they've made that connection, correct? So now that their cost is reduced completely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a perfect system, right? You know.
And would they have to help pay part of that within?
They wouldn't. I mean, we're not charging them to bring the sewer all the way up to Louise as it is now, right? That's just how development progresses.
Right, okay. Yes, Counselor Saley.
Okay. I'll start with this. I don't remember doing a lot of septic variances or sewer variances, I guess, allowing people to have septic in the last 6 years. Unless it was absolutely impossible for them to put in septic. I remember, I think it was Bob England, he had a subdivision that was going to require pumps and all kinds of crazy things because of the topography, and we did a variance on that, but otherwise we really haven't. We've stuck to the rules, tried to get more people on septic for all the reasons you mentioned, the injection well, the environment, and those kind of things. Would you concur?
Yes, historically, not very many variances that have been given.
Okay. So
Most
just-
of them are fairly unique.
Okay, so just as a standard, it's rare. And then my next question is, I believe, but I am not a contractor, that most or all septics eventually fail. Is that true?
Eventually, something will happen and that it will either require some type of remediation or a replacement of the septic or the leach field or something like that. Eventually, something's going to happen that's going to require
It's not a
intervention.
system that lasts forever. So all of these houses eventually will have to hook up to the sewer.
That's long-term, that's what we're thinking, yes.
Mhm. And then those homes around this lot, they will do the payback to the homeowner that's bringing the sewer down. So right across the street, right across Diamond Spur, these two homes, they're on septic, their septic fails, they're gonna have to pay back to this property, aren't they, to hook into that sewer that they brought down?
So the customer has an option to record a payback, and so in this situation, it would affect this lot here, the 31001,
Mm-hmm.
the 31002, and probably the 31017.
Mm-hmm.
And what the payback, it lasts for 20 years, and so if they wait it out 20 years, then in theory,
If they can.
if they can.
These are pretty big, nice homes. They probably don't want to wait out septic failure. But
Yeah.
if they did, 20
Yeah,
years.
20 years would be the limit.
Okay. And do we ever compromise and say, okay, just bring it down Diamond Spur and we'll wait for 31035 Pinto to pick it up the rest of the way? Do you ever?
So the council is more than willing, or more than able to do something like that. I think I've seen it once in my tenure here where something like that was done on a corner lot,
Okay.
where they said, hey, maybe we just go up Diamond Spur and not Pinto.
If this, and I watched the muck meeting with great anticipation for a conversation about why
It
they
was very
went with the
quiet.
variant, and there was not even any eye contact. So I didn't get a lot out of them about why they made that decision, but it sounded like cost was the reason for the request for the variance. It's just cost prohibitive.
Yeah, I think cost was definitely a consideration. I think they also looked at that there were other homes there that were already on septic. So looking at the short term, there wouldn't be a whole lot of immediate connection to it. I think maybe that could have been some of what was in their mind.
But at some point, long-term, eventually, this property will have to hook up to septic. Even given this variance, their septic would fail, or their septic would fail and have to hook up to sewer, excuse me. at
Yeah, I mean,
some
yeah,
point.
I can't predict what the code's going to be when that happens, but as it stands now, yes, that would be a requirement if it were to fail.
Okay.
Yes.
And you gave us an estimate for sewer, but do you know what the cost of septic? I just like to get an idea of what the difference
The
is.
septic's less. I think
Sure.
it's probably 18 to 20,000,
Okay.
somewhere around there, but
So
that's
they might
just rough.
save 10 to 20 if we ask them to go all the way. Okay. I think that's all my questions. Thank you, Phil.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, Vice Mayor.
so some follow-up questions. Payback, if they record a payback, it's 20 years, up to 20
Yes.
years to wait. How long has this area of Rancho been established? it the late 80s?
The 90s, I would say mid-90s.
Okay.
Maybe closer to the 2000s.
And what's the average lifespan of a septic? Isn't it around 30 years?
Yeah, I don't know. It
So-
really depends on how they take care of it. But
Just putting it, these are nice homes and they probably take care of their
They
septic.
can last a
so-
while. I mean, obviously, those have been
Exactly.
there for at least 20 years, so I'd say 20, 30 years.
Right. So I'm in favor of the variance, and I'll just tell you why. There's only one property there. I hate setting a precedence also. If there were a developer, I'd have a different point of view, that there's more. I don't think the burden needs to be on this particular property owner at way over and above expenses for them to build a single-family residence, waiting for somebody else to hook up to septic or to sewer because their septic fails 20 years from now. This is an individual lot. There's only one other lot. So I'm gonna vote in favor of the variance.
Okay, thank you,
Mayor?
Vice Mayor. Yes, Councilor Walker.
We have Dustin Lewis in the audience, and he's a contractor. He could probably give us costs. And,
I think he's representing the applicant
Is
as
he?
well.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, a cost on a system like that, I mean, I've built a few homes, and I would guess that for that size of a house, you're probably under the $10,000 mark to put a septic in. I know the smaller houses I've been doing lately, they're $6,000. And if you take care of it, it could last 30, 40 years. It just
Longer
depends on
than
how
that.
they take care of it, longer
That's
than,
right.
yeah.
Well, doesn't state law require that when a house is, when you
sell,
it has.
they do an inspection.
The tank it has to be inspected and the
Yeah.
tank has to be pumped.
Yes.
For example, I have a house that was built in '74 that I bought as a investment house. And all I had to do was have that pumped and that septic system
And
is
it's
working
certified.
fine.
Yeah.
So it's almost 50 years old.
Yeah.
So, yes, I tend to agree with Vice Mayor. I hate making exceptions. But on the same token too, there's a huge cost in this. And, you know, sometimes I think we need to have some common sense too. And also because all the neighborhood around it, they're all on septic also.
This lot was designed, when it was built, it was gonna be on septic.
Right.
It's just the city ordinances have changed.
Correct.
It still meets ADQ standards for lot size.
Lot size doesn't come into play.
Okay, on this one, correct,
Right.
okay. New
Of course-
subdivision it would.
And of course, it still has to pass
It
perk
doesn't
tests
come
and
into
all
play
that
at
kind
all.
of stuff.
Huh?
It still has to pass perk tests and when they, anyway. So, some thoughts on it. Council?
I'm
Mr.
in
Ward?
agreement. I'm in agreement with the variance. It's cost prohibitive to me. It could make a difference between where the house gets built or where the lot is set.
Good point. Counselor Pat, you're assigned to Municipal Utilities Commission. Were you able to attend that meeting?
I did.
Okay.
And all the points that were addressed at that meeting have already been brought up, I think, except for the representative of the property owners gave a cost of what it would be, and I think it was more than $35,000 or $40,000 to run the sewer across Louise down Diamond and partially across Pinto. The property owner's position was, in order to hook up to sewer, would render their property worthless because the project would then become cost prohibitive. Looking at all of the properties on the south, I believe it's the south side of Louise, on septic, this would be the only one that would have the requirement to hook up to the sewer system. So it's funny, they're asking for a variance request, but if we didn't grant it, they would be the exception. So I'm actually in favor as well as granting their variance request so they could have a septic system and utilize their property.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Pat. Counselor Staley?
So Phil, you can read the numbers. Is there a way to compromise on this and have them not go so far so they can hook up to the sewer and keep that, lower that cost? Because the cost is in, right, how far you have to trench and how much of that sewer line you have to put in. So if we compromised and just went down a little ways so they can hook up, we'd have another sewer customer. They'd have a better system. We'd have more water going back into the aquifer. It'd be kind of a win-win.
What I would suggest is if the council's looking for a compromise, I would have them extend along the frontage of Diamond Spur.
I wonder if we have any idea of,
Up to Pinto.
would that cut the cost in half?
It would reduce it. I don't know if it would be half. It would be, the cost savings would probably be less than half.
Okay. I don't see any takers, so I tried.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Well, actually, I did want to ask the homeowner, the prospective builders, if they had any comment, if they'd like to.
Sure.
If you would like. You don't have to. Mario or Gloria, did you like to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I live in Rancho Santa Fe, and I've been there for almost 20 years, and I've never had any problems with my septic, and it would be nice to bring my family here, and that law, this is Mario Hello, he's the property owner, and I think, but it's up, it's up to you guys, it's only fair because everybody is on septic, and when he bought the lot too, we were all under the impression that that would be, a septic lot, and I already made a contract with, Dustin from Kingman Septic, to have the septic done there and move forward, and we're at its standby, so we would really appreciate if the variance would be accepted,
Okay.
because the cost would be a lot for him to.
Dusty, did you want to weigh in too?
I might have some, good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Just some clarification on that it might clarify some things, cost and requirements for septic systems. And septic system design, and the Rancho Santa Fe area falls under that design criteria also. You have to have 100% reserve area for whatever that disposal area is in the original design, you have to block that off. You can't have any structures or anything limiting that area. So if you do have failure at any time in that 20, 30, 40, 50 years that you had spoke about, that area is blocked off so that you have that area to install that reserve. You're not, obligated to run sewer at that point. You do have that reserve area that's blocked off to install another disposal system.
Okay.
And that does recharge back into the aquifer at a little bit different rate than what it does as a central charging port of your sewage treatment plant. And then I'll touch real quick because I know you guys have a huge agenda. The cost with the engineering, because of course that does require engineering, traffic control, asphalt repairs, and then that footage they had, plus the services. It was upwards, Hobby Engineering helped a little bit and with some quotes on that. It was 70 to 90. It may be over that now with some of the cost increase we had. And septic systems right now for this property that they're doing is under 10,000. So
Okay.
Just a couple things. I know you're busy tonight, so thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. City
Thank you.
Council.
Thank you.
Counselor, any other questions? Counselors, any other questions then? Okay. Once again, I do want to emphasize the fact this is a variance and with large capital letters, exception. This is not, because I hate to set a precedent. So we need to remember this is an exception. Can we have a motion then for approving item 5B, consideration of a variance request to connect to sewer, engineering 23-0065?
I'll
I'll
make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 5A, resolution number 5466, adoption of fiscal year 2023-24 tentative budget. The fiscal year 2023-24 tentative budget reflects revisions made to what was presented at the May 17th, May 18th, and May 22nd budget work sessions. In order to balance the budget based on these revisions, city staff has developed 4 options for the council's consideration in adopting the tentative budget. Additional revisions can still be made tonight and will be incorporated into the final budget scheduled for adoption on July 18th, 2023. The tentative budget sets a ceiling on appropriations, which essentially means that the final budget adopted can meet but not exceed the amount adopted with this resolution. The tentative budget is within the state expenditure limitation as modified by permanent base adjustment. Staff recommends approval. Manager Foggin.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, we have a short presentation just to walk you through what changes have been made to the budget that was originally presented back in our workshop. So just to help everybody understand where we are in the budget process, we are here on June 20th, and that would mean that we would be looking for a final budget adoption July 18th. We are still within state requirements to approve our budget, so no worries there. As you can see, the footnote below indicates that we actually need or are required to have the tentative budget adopted no later than July 17th. So we are actually meeting the requirements state has for adoption of the fiscal 24 budget. Next slide. The first revision that we had to make was based on House Bill 2543. This was basically known as the Rural Transportation Bill. This bill was approved by the House and the Senate pretty much as much unanimously as you possibly can get a bill through both the House and Senate at the state level. And then through the adoption of the budget, the state budget, all expenditures that were approved in Senate Bill 2543 went in. And after a weekend of negotiations, the Monday that followed was basically the budget was released and our projects were cut out of the budget. And so that actually, we had built 3 projects into the budget. That was Rancho Santa Fe interchange. It was also several phases of Eastern, and then Airway. And so in order to basically deal with that, we had to make the adjustments to that money going out of the budget. And so what we ended up with is we had to adjust the recreation center project, and basically we changed the funding for that and moved it from being 5.5 million in a general obligation bond to 6.5 million, and moving the cash that was for that project to Eastern. And then we made adjustments to the Bull Mountain interim channel improvements to take care of the airway project that is much, much needed as far as our airway construction and flood control at airway.
Ron,
Yes,
what happened to the WACOG funding that we had for the Eastern project?
it's still there.
Okay, so this was just additional, is that
Correct.
because of the redesign, or?
No, well, the million is for the redesign. What we were going to do with the Eastern Street project is just continue to build it as far as the state money would allow us to go.
Right.
And so with that money going away, we needed to make sure that we had enough to do the realignment, but that budget money or that grant money is still there to take care of the realignment.
Is there a date when we either have to have that project finished by, or else the grant will go back?
There's no expiration date that I know of.
Okay.
We obviously are trying to get that done as quickly as possible. The money was made available to us at the beginning of this fiscal year, and I don't know, Phil, are you aware of timing on that? I'm not aware of.
So we had to submit a schedule saying this is what we think is going to happen. And so we want to try to stay as close to that schedule as possible, but we did let them know that the bids came in higher, and so I think they're going to work with us.
Okay, and I assume that schedule probably shows that we would have already started the project.
Correct.
Right. Given the change to this House bill, which I don't think you should ever count your chickens before they hatch, but given this change, would you rethink that redesign and maybe make what we have work, or scale it down a bit so that you can get this Eastern project started and we fix at least the worst parts of it now, and then not worry about the rest of phase 2 and 3?
I think that's what we're doing. So we're going to just focus on this one phase from Airway to basically Calumet, and everything else beyond that is unfunded.
But I guess what I'm asking about is that redesign, the cost of the redesign, given now that we don't have the funding for the rest.
So what we're trying to redesign is trying to reduce the cost.
Oh, I see.
of phase
But it costs $1
one.
million to redesign it to read.
No, the bids came in 1.5 million over.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying the redesign was an
No,
additional $1
no,
million.
the redesign would be like 30,000 or something like that.
About how long will that take?
I need lots of people to help me. But we're actually.
You're doing the design yourself?
No.
Oh.
We have a consultant. We're working with them to redo a scope of work so that they can start making changes to the plans to try to make adjustments, reduce scope and a whole bunch of stuff so that we can get it within the budget that we have.
So no idea.
I think we're going to try to get this redesigned by we're in June, so July and August timeframe is what it's going to take to get it redesigned, and then we'll put it back out to bid.
How long did it take you to do that bid process this last round?
30 days, right?
Yeah, we
much
had it
longer?
out for about 30 days. It's a little shorter than we want, but we're just trying to get it done. So 30 days is about what would be the minimum I think we'd want to put it out for.
So it will still break ground in 2023.
I hope so, yes.
So do I.
We
Okay.
need it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no reason why this can't break ground in 2023.
Yeah.
It's going to be the fall or late summer, and
Yeah.
it's later than we wanted. But frankly, doing the due diligence on the bids coming in so much over, and there was a number of items in that we just could not justify paying. The mobilization costs were 3-4 times what engineering estimates showed that they were going to be. So, I mean, it's one of those things where the bid missed something, and there was cost for traffic control and moving the signal that just were outrageous. And I think it would have been inappropriate for us to move forward with that pricing.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Of course, once again, we are talking about the Eastern Street realignment.
That's
In
correct.
that budget.
That's
Just for
correct.
clarification. So the main thing is that is still in the works.
Yep.
Budget for.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Continue, Mr. Foggin.
Thank you. Next slide. Next slide is a breakout of the changes that were asked for in our workshops, and I just wanted to walk through those with everybody to make sure that we captured what had been discussed. So we changed police officer, firefighter, and fire engineer pay plans. It was presented at a 12-step program. It is now a 10-step program at a cost of just around $365,000. We changed the sergeant, lieutenant, fire captains, battalion chiefs of operation pay to a 10-step plan as well.
Manager Foggin,
Yes.
on that 10-step plan,
Uh-huh.
I just want to confirm that those, if adopted this tonight, that those personnel are going to be slotted according to years of service. Is
That's
that how I
correct.
understand that? Okay,
Yep.
so that will go into effect upon adoption,
Well, it'll go
after the
fiscal
July
year.
meeting. Yeah,
right.
fiscal year. Okay.
Well, it'll be effective July 1st.
Right, thank
right.
you.
Not when you adopt the budget, because the fiscal year will have already started. And then that 10-step plan for those positions will increase the budget by $235,000 roughly. There was also standby pay for police officers serving as detectives. That equated to about $30,000. An increase in detective pay went from 80 cents to $1 an hour, which was just about $3,500. There were 2 part-time police cadet positions added to the police department at a cost of roughly $37,000. There was a reclass of the assistant to the city manager to an assistant city manager position of a cost of $67,000. A community development director, full-time position, fully loaded is roughly $167,000. And a civil engineer, full-time position, funded by the general fund for about $126,000. So the total impact to the general fund budget is roughly $1,030,000. So, questions regarding that?
And funding, what's our funding for that right now? What is that looking like? That's funding for the next, I know we've done away with some projects, which you're getting ready to explain. Do you want to ask this question later? We can
I
come
think
back to it?
we have some options that
Right.
to be considered, because this is $1 million shortfall.
Correct.
So,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. All right. In addition, the council had requested that the new Drive Electric Earth Day Festival contribution be eliminated. And then also the electric vehicle experience that was on the 5-year capital plan was removed from the capital plan, and that money was put into the capital projects contingency. And then as part of the conversation that the council had, I know it says staff proposal, but I would say that this is just in response to the council wanting to make sure that there was enough money for the design of Sunbelt Park. What we did was we moved $150,000 into the fiscal 2024 budget and moved that and reduced that amount on an out year for that project, so that we wanted to make sure that we had enough money to not only do the design, but also possibly start some of the construction in the fiscal year 2024. So that had no change on the 5-year capital plan. It was just moved $150,000 forward for anticipation of that. Questions on those changes? All right. So in looking at balancing the budget, what we wanted to do is we wanted to give the council some options on how to take care of the $1 million shortfall. And so 2 of the options are based on ongoing revenue. So it would be the increases of that $1 million are ongoing, require ongoing revenue. So we wanted to show you what possibly what that would look like to cover with current ongoing expenditures. So option 1 is the pay plan for the general employee population would remain in effect. The no market adjustment for employees that are not public safety listed in the slide earlier. We would still propose to do a 2% COLA for those general employees. And then we've also looked at capital projects that could help reduce some of the overrun. And so we've proposed, and I think in all the options, to remove break room, shade extensions, and parking lot covers at KDP, and city complex entry doors were going to be replaced, and we were going to add more safety lighting in the parking lot. Those have been removed. And if option 1 is picked, the total appropriations for our fiscal year 2024 budget would be $364,305,898. Option 2 is the new pay. We would try to follow a new pay plan for the general employee population, but that market adjustment would be reduced by 30%. And then in doing that, it would also require a 7% reduction in general fund operating budgets. And then, as I said before, the removal of those capital projects would be part of that. The total appropriations for fiscal year 24 in that scenario would be $364,883,266. So those 2 options are operating money for operating money. The next 2 are option 3 and 4 are one-time money being used to take care of ongoing expenses. So option 3 is general fund balance. We have a minimum requirement of 25% to be carried year to year for our fund balance. So this option would use general fund balance that would carry through 25% for until fiscal year 2028, at which time after that we would actually drop below 25%, which would be in opposition to the requirement the council has set for fund balance. The new pay plan for non-general employees still would go into effect. I love that movie. So we would still be able to do the market adjustments for the general employees. We're still proposing to remove the capital projects that we talked about in the first option. And the total appropriations for this option would be $365,840,442. Option 4 is basically one-time money in looking at capital projects. So it would reduce capital projects fund contingency by $2.5 million. This covers the $500,000 of the general fund's shortfall each year through fiscal year 2028. And then we're also would be proposing to change the funding source for the recreation center, basically making the general obligation fund bond higher and using the cash to pay the difference for the employee increase. That would be $530,000 each year through fiscal year 2028. Again, after fiscal year 2028, we would have, basically you would be, for the most part, out of one-time money in that option. This plan would again allow for the new pay plan to go into effect for all employees. The full market adjustment for, that would be a full market adjustment as option 3 covered as well. And then that would equate to a total appropriations of $363,340,442. And that those are the options. Happy to try to answer any questions on those options or anything else regarding the shortfall.
Council, questions for Mr. Foggin or comments to start?
I have a comment.
Vice Mayor?
So I have a comment and a question. So in option 4, what would it look like to move the increased recreation center debt funding by $2.7 million over to option 3? What would that do to our general fund balance percentage?
It would keep it higher. So
Well, I know that, but
yeah.
I'm looking for the percentage that it flexes up. It goes to 30?
30%.
Okay. All right. I know that's a hybrid of what you guys presented.
Yeah, and there's certainly nothing chiseled in stone on this. A much deeper look may be problematic as far as how, if you try to commingle the options too much.
Right, right.
But
That would be the only hybrid option that I would like to see considered. My other question is bed tax. Do we have any what can we do with bed tax as far as increases for future
You can't
revenues?
use bed tax. You can only use 2.5% of the bed tax. Anything above that has to go to tourism.
Okay, all right. So, and we're maxed out at that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So just for discussion purposes, I mean, I lean towards option 3 because we're taking care of all of the staff on the city. We're doing the step plans like, we had talked about during budget. We're doing the market adjustments for retention in other departments. The only thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see that increased recreation center debt funding moved over to option 3, which then raises the general fund balance to 30%. And I think it puts us in a safer place. That's my comments.
My
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Oh, I apologize,
Councilor
Mayor.
Pat?
I don't know if I have the best recollection, but I thought during our budget meetings, we were discussing possibly scrapping the rec center and considering an event center instead. I thought that there was a difference, and this point was brought up by Councilman Walker. So I'm wondering if we're going to be doing the same thing that we're doing with the electric car museum, either shelve it or put it in some sort of contingency fund until we actually get a better answer. Because I thought the consensus, at least from maybe I had a different perception at these budget meetings. But
The
I thought-
council at that time had said that they wanted to look at a recreation center and an event center. They're not interchangeable. They are two different products.
I thought it was swapping one out for the other, but maybe I'm speaking.
I was trying to do a hybrid between the two of them, is what I kind of thought.
Keith, yeah.
I was looking at doing a hybrid between the two to bring both into one location. Don't know if it can happen, but
And that's what I was in support of too, because I remember the discussion.
And I apologize, Manager Foggin, can you remind me why, maybe my council member should remind me instead, why are we pushing for a community development director? Again, I don't recall this discussion.
That was a request by Councilmember Walker.
we did talk about that.
Oh, this is to oversee our building department, our planning department, to get the permits out. Thank you. Okay, I thought this was a different type of community director.
No.
Oh.
Thank you for that clarification.
So I was looking at option 4. That's where I was leaning towards, but I was wondering about just reducing the amount of money that we transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund every year going forward in order to cover these increases for the salary.
That's exactly what we'd be talking about.
Okay, because it does say the fund's contingency of 2.5 million. And what I was talking about is just overall reducing the amount of capital projects we do every single year in order to have that money support our city employees instead.
So in the 5-year capital plan, we have either taken fund balance and put it into the capital projects fund to cover future, either existing or future projects. So this would just bring that money back to the general fund. But on ongoing, as far as ongoing capital projects, we only have, in the general fund, we only have really 2 projects that are ongoing that add up to about $250,000 a year for 4 years, and one that goes 5 years that has $150,000, and that's park, playground, and park improvements.
Okay, maybe I'm confused here, but I believe I read that this year, we're transferring $2 million out of the general fund into capital. Is that right?
Correct.
So that isn't really projects that are necessarily being paid for by the general fund, but it's just annually. I guess it gets confusing because we talk about it as one-time money, but we're always, every year, taking general fund money, which is not one-time money, and we're transferring it over. And we could really reduce that and get our arms around our retention and recruitment problems. Is that correct? Are we saying the same thing?
Yeah, no, so what we've done over the years is we've basically we're taking money that when you get to the end of the fiscal year, you have your fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what we've done over the years is dedicated that some of that fund balance to capital projects. So there's no guarantee when, for instance, when we present to you a balanced budget for the general fund, that anticipates all departments spending all of their allotted money. And what you hope for is that your revenues exceeded your expenditures. And that, you know, I mean, in a perfect world, well, in a city's perfect world, you would always have more money coming in than went out. So we've been fortunate to have that. And that's what we've used, and that's what's referred to. We often refer to that as one-time revenue. And the calculation is based on what our estimates are for sales tax collection and what our state shared revenue is. And if, for instance, next year the state shows up and they decide that they're going to cut state shared revenue, or they're going to do something with taxes. You know, we've been facing this threat now for a couple of years. The latest one has been the rental tax, sales tax on residential homes or residential properties. That's a $300,000 loss that we would really have no way of correcting or supplementing. Another one is the flat tax. So the flat tax has been talked about a lot over the last couple of years, and the league and our lobbyists who are here have been working really hard to try to protect our position in what we get and how we're affected by the flat tax. And there was a whole bunch of negotiations done, and they got to the end and they said that the cities would be held harmless on the flat tax. Well, that was kind of a general statement. We ended up still being affected and would have lost and will lose if they adopt that, about $225,000. So in just those two items, we're down $500,000 in what we were normally going to be able to collect. So that is really what, when we give the 5-year forecast, we're trying to anticipate doing some capital projects that we are going to make more money in sales tax than what it costs to run the city, and that we're going to be able to cover operating costs, and we're going to be able to pay our employees both competitively and keep up with market, which is that cost of living increase that we've started a couple years ago, giving employees, trying to stay within market. But what we try to dedicate, the money that we try to make sure is going into capital projects, is really anything over the operating, you know, what it costs to operate. So
hold on. The $2 million I'm talking about that's being transferred this year is just surplus from last year.
That's correct.
And you're saying it's not reliable.
Miss Tina's coming to correct me.
Okay.
Come on up.
So
come on up, Miss Tina.
Because where I'm going with this is year one, but next year I'm going to be asking, when are we going to hire more police officers to cover the East Bench? When are we going to hire more fire personnel to cover the East Bench? What other employees, city employees, are we going to need to cover our city as it grows and adds these interchanges? And how are we looking forward to do that? So
I would say,
in this budget,
I don't mean to interrupt, but what I would say is in our 5-year forecast, we have anticipated the increase in personnel needed for exactly what you're referring to.
In which year? Next year?
So if wherever the fire station is programmed to be built, that is where the equipment and personnel have been programmed in to basically go into effect in those out years. And so I don't have the
for
document.
both fire or for fire and police when that?
Well,
because
fire for sure.
We had talked about a substation being there. But as it stands currently,
Well,
they don't really need a police substation to
right.
start having enough officers to
Well,
cover
and
the
the
expense.
substation is really their car. I mean, that's, the
So-
reality is that over, communities that have substations for police officers are generally not used.
Okay.
I mean,
So what year would those police officers be added? Because I
So-
feel like we should already have more people covering the East Bench because it's grown considerably. So
Yeah.
what year is that
So
programmed?
I think that would, I think, that when those interchanges become usable is when we would be looking for when to activate more personnel. The police department has talked about adding another beat when Rancho Santa Fe is completed, as an example.
But it takes a year to get a police officer in the field. So if we wait until for 2 years when those interchanges open, it'll be another year of not having enough coverage just to get all those officers that we need. So I would hope that we would do it before then. But what you're telling me is you've already planned for that.
Yes.
And we're not going to be making more cuts to capital in order to cover that staffing.
This is the.
Assuming that Tina's projections are correct, and historically, in my experience, they have been.
Well, and I would say that the way that we budget and our philosophy has been to underestimate revenues and make sure not overestimate expenditures, but to be what is known as conservative budgeting, which is, we don't look for pie in the sky. Well, can't say that because we're counting on the rural transportation bill passing, but we generally don't look for pie in the sky revenue and try to do and hire employees before the money. I mean, that's really, when you do that for capital projects, that's recoverable. When you do it with ongoing expenditures, whether that's O&M costs or whether that's employee costs, that's when it becomes dangerous, because when you start using the capital projects money, it may cover you for 5, 6, even 7 years, but what are you going to do in year 8 or 9 or 10? Because part of this is that we still, even with the $1,030,000 that the budget went up, we still have to keep up with the raises, and we still have to keep up with cost of living to make sure that we stay competitive in the market. It's not enough to just have this, a step system that's 10 or 12 or whatever, but you have to do the cost of living adjustments to that step plan, or you fall behind anyway, right? So it's, I think the step plan increases 3.5% each step, but if we have cost of living that goes to 3 or 4%, that means that year we have, if we're going to stay competitive anyway, that means we're giving raises of 6.5%, 7% to try to keep up. And so that's what is going to be difficult using this capital project or your fund balance, is because if you have a bad year and we don't meet Tina's projections, a recession or whatever, sales tax drops, 3%, couple percent, that's going to be a scramble to try to make sure that we're covering those ongoing costs. So
I am still leaning towards option 4. I think it is smarter to be looking at making cuts to capital versus drawing down your savings, especially given the situation that you just mentioned. If something happens, now your general fund balance is so low, maybe you won't have it where you need to be to pay everything. I also lean towards reducing capital projects because we've seen year after year projects that aren't, they're not happening in the year they're designated for, so then that money is just sitting there. We should be investing in our staff. We should be paying a competitive wage because as we're seeing, we are spending a ton of money on retention, millions of dollars just in one department alone, trying to replace people that are leaving for better pay after we've paid out to train them. And so I think that making this shift now and getting the city as a better employer that can retain people and can also get new employees to fill all these spots, these empty places that are hurting our processes, is more important than some of the things that we pay for on the capital projects list. I think people would rather have police and fire than new tractors or generators or these other kinds of expenses. So if we just got used to now spending less in capital, it's probably a better way to go. That's just my opinion.
Mayor,
Yes, Vice Mayor.
I was just gonna ask Counselor Staley, are you open to moving that 2.7? The reason I want to shift that over and keep the reduced capital projects in option 4, I kind of feel like that's a good safety net. So, you know, it's not spending everything, and it's not, you know, it's a good safety net for future. So we could use it for some capital projects, or we could shift it over if we needed to.
I am not opposed to making that compromise because it still is a reduction.
And then we'd be
To a capital
increasing the
project.
general funds balance up to 30%, which right now, what did we spend down to with the streets?
35%,
We're at 35?
yes.
Okay, so we would be going to 30. Perfect, thank you.
Other comments from council?
Thought I heard a motion.
Well, no, I think, actually, it looks like we actually need to choose an option. So
I
far,
heard an option.
I think, so far, the Vice Mayor is leaning towards option 3, and I
Well,
think she has.
it's a combination of option 3 and 4.
Right,
I would
it's a
support what
hybrid.
she's saying, yeah.
So I'd like to direct staff to go with option 3, moving the increased recreation center's debt funding by 2.7 million over to option 3, which would increase the general fund balance to 30% and would still leave us that 2.5 million in capital projects.
Okay,
It's my recommendation.
our motion, a recommendation?
And that's including the resolution,
Right,
because we need to approve the resolution, which is the tentative budget.
right.
So that's,
Correct.
you're
That-
approving the resolution with that option.
With that option.
With that option, correct.
That would be the motion.
Correct.
That's the motion.
And I would
Okay.
second that.
Okay, we got a second. Any discussion before we vote?
I rather just stay with option 4 the way it currently is, until we get our capital projects spent the way that they're supposed to be spent. I do see a benefit for option 3 as well, though. For instance, sometimes people will cut into their savings if they're making an investment and they know that it'll pay off, but it's certainly a gamble that we're taking. But I think that option 4 happens to be the safer model while guaranteeing our competitive pay towards our employees for the short-term future. But I really am hoping and thinking that all this will turn around once we get our interchanges in and get our economy booming, hopefully. But I just want to stick with option 4 as is.
Mayor,
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Counselor Pat, we're only dipping into our savings 5%. Just a point of record.
I get it.
I still stand with my recommendation, my motion.
Moving on with option 3. Counselor Ward, do you have anything to weigh in on this?
I was looking at option 4.
Okay, thank you. You know, one concern, Ron, and you mentioned actually, and there's been some discussion as far as if. Hopefully, we don't go into a recession because that could adjust our budget and we would have to come back and scramble for what we're going to do. Ron, you mentioned this is only good through 2028?
That's correct. Obviously, we'll continue to do 5-year forecasts
and
and,
adjustments and.
right.
Okay. I think what's most important and I appreciate Tina and Krista and everybody as far as city staff working on this, because I know they put a lot of time into it. My biggest concern, and I think you're addressing it, is taking care of all our employees, not just our public safety. Because, and once again, I have a son that's a first responder. So, you know, you have special places in my heart, but all our employees need to be taken care of. And so that's why I think I'm going to support Vice Mayor in option 3 in this. So that's where we're at.
And
I got it.
3 and 4
With the hybrid.
give everybody all the market increases that we already
That's correct.
talked about,
That's
right?
correct.
Everybody will get those raises to be at a competitive rate within
That's
our
correct.
area.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second of the hybrid option, option 3 with the hybrid part added to it.
Yeah, we got it. Yep.
Okay. All of those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, department reports.
Thank you so much.
6A. Thanks, Tina. Domestic violence court update. Judge Singer.
They've come a lot further, and I'll be meeting with you all later. Did you want them to go ahead and do their department report first? Okay, all right.
Thanks, Tom.
Get ready to be wowed. All right.
Start the timer.
Start the timer, that's right. Got it. Okay.
You're just going to be lucky if we don't put a 3-minute timer on you.
That's right. I was looking for that thing. All right. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. I wanted to give you all a brief presentation about our domestic violence court, give you an update. It was back in 2021 that I first came here to talk about having a domestic violence treatment court. It goes along with our veterans treatment court. We have a truancy court, and so it just felt like something that in collaboration with the prosecutors in the city attorney's office, the defense counsel, and that it was something that we really wanted to do and needed to do. So I wanted to give you all an update of where we're at on that, being in existence now for a little over a year, and our numbers and things like that. I asked Annie to go ahead and show that this is a recent news clip. It's about 2 minutes long from Phoenix, but it kind of tells you about kind of why we do the domestic violence treatment court and kind of what the theme is, unfortunately, around the state when it comes to domestic violence. So if we could play that clip, or do I do it?
Arizona consistently ranks among one of the top states where there are deaths due to domestic violence. A local organization released their new report this week and found more than 100 victims to domestic violence. In many of these cases, the perpetrators were men. The crime scenes are just part of the story. Those whose lives were taken are another.
Some of these folks that are killed are bystanders. Some of these folks are family members of someone who is impacted by domestic violence.
Over the past week, 3 people have lost their lives to domestic violence in the valley. 53-year-old Jose Chagnon is accused of murdering his wife in Avondale Tuesday. Court records show the victim had an order of protection.
Sometimes that moment and that piece of paper causes an individual who is using domestic violence to unravel. And if I can't have you, no one else can.
Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence has a yearly report. For 2022, it found 23% of intimate partner homicides had known prior reports of abuse or orders of protection in place.
We compile this report through a review of media and public sources, so this is not an official review of crime data.
Those who work to prevent domestic violence and provide resources acknowledge the data is not 100% accurate.
Not that we're including folks that shouldn't be included, but rather that there are folks whose lives have been taken that might not be on the list.
The vast majority of domestic violence cases, about 68%, go unreported.
In Chandler Wednesday morning, there was another case of domestic violence. 38-year-old Kevin Holmberg is accused of shooting and killing his pregnant wife, 41-year-old Catherine Holmberg. According to the state report, 76% of domestic violence deaths involve guns.
We have access to firearms readily available, especially for individuals who should not be accessing those who are at risk for harming their partners or themselves.
If you or someone you know finds themselves in a situation where there is domestic violence, we do have resources on our AZ Family app and website. Reporting in Peoria, Alexis Dominguez for Arizona's Family.
Do not buy solar panels if you live in Arizona. Americans living in zip codes starting...
Oh, IT? Yeah. Okay.
Aaron, can you close that window?
Anyways, if y'all are interested in solar panels, I would like to, that's kind of a side deal that I've got going here, so just, yeah, I guess so. Okay, thank you. Anyway, that was just from a couple of weeks ago, and saw that and just thought, again, kind of shows you this is a problem in this state. It's a problem in Mojave County. That's why we run this program. That's why I came and asked and discussed it with you all back in 2021. And I just want to let you know what we're doing about it, because in my opinion, domestic violence is probably the most serious crimes that we see in our court. Again, we're a misdemeanor court, traffic court, and things like that. But people can argue, well, DUIs, shoplifting, and things like that. But in my opinion, it's the domestic violence, especially how it can escalate, and what we're trying to get accomplished with our DV court program. It used to be when somebody would come to us and they would have domestic violence charges, they would, if they were tried or they pled out, they were convicted of said offense. Okay, you sentence them to counseling. They're not supervised. You give them rules and conditions. You hope for the best. And we just saw time after time. I think we all got frustrated between the prosecutors, between defense counsel, and myself. It was just like, these people just keep committing the same offense over and over, and it's escalating. What can we do to stop this? Because it's a plague in Mojave County. It's a plague in the city of Kingman, and it needs to be addressed. And so that's why we came up with this program, and I'm proud of it. Y'all should have the materials that we have for our program handbook, the guidelines that we have, our operations manual and things like that. It kind of tells you step by step from law enforcement when they first get engaged with these individuals to when they come into the court system, and we can see them and address this and get our thumb on. Now, what are we doing? Now we have them supervised. Now they're coming to court once a month, and we're making sure they're in compliance, doing their counseling, making sure we're drug testing them. A lot of times, I know this probably won't be shocking, but a lot of times domestic violence is tied into substance abuse, drugs and alcohol abuse. So we're testing them randomly and regularly. Probation is going into their homes and making sure that they are in compliance. We're getting reports from the counselors and the counseling agencies about, are they doing this? And again, coming to see me on a monthly basis and making sure that they're doing everything that we've been asking of them and ordering them to do, so that we can get this nipped in the bud. And I really think we're doing some good. We take a model from the Veterans Treatment Court that I'm very proud of, but it's to a different extent. It's not as intensive as the vet court program, but still, it's got the same model, the same theories on if you keep your thumb on people and also look at them big picture. What else is going on in their lives with the families and everything about why they got themselves into trouble? The veterans, we look at the big picture. We still try to do this with these individuals as well. Is it because unemployment? Okay, well, we're going to try to help you get a job. Is it because of housing? We're going to try to help you get housing. Is it because of issues with the kids? What is going on? So we get involved in their lives similar to the veterans, and that way we hopefully, big picture, when they do finish our program, they've completed the counseling, they've been substance-free, they're doing everything that's been ordered of them, and then they get the incentive at the end, which a lot of times their charges are reduced or dismissed, then hopefully it's a success. Because I'll tell you this, I've been a lawyer now for, 26 years. I've been a judge for over 20 years. I know y'all are shocked, like, what, you look so young. But anyway, and when I think about it, and I prosecute so many people with domestic violence, I've represented them, obviously presided over cases. Here's the thing when you look at it big picture. These individuals that come to us and have these charges, you can look at just a file and the probable cause statement, the police reports and things like that. But I also think we need to look long-term as well. And that is that, one, that you saw in that video, a lot of times the people who get domestic violence, it's just not a first-time thing, and it escalates. And what we want to do is we want to nip it in the bud, and we want to figure out, so they learn the tools, and they've got them, so it doesn't escalate, so then we're not dealing with homicides or really serious issues. Because again, the people who are coming to me are misdemeanors. So they're serious, but not as serious as they could be, as our prosecutors and county attorneys see up at the Superior Court. And hopefully we're addressing it at our level so it doesn't get to that level and more serious things. And another thing that I've always preached, and I believe it wholeheartedly, is what I've seen, is it's generational. When domestic violence is occurring in these homes and the children see it, it's one of two things. The children are going to learn, yes, that is the way I'm supposed to treat my spouse, my husband, my wife, my intimate partner. Or two, this is what I'm supposed to accept as said individual, as I become an adult. I'm supposed to accept being the victim of domestic violence because that's just normal and natural and everything. And so those are things we want to address too in our program, and hopefully we're doing that. And so it's long-term, we're seeing solutions. Bottom line is numbers. Any treatment court you do, vet court, truancy court, whatever court you do, it all comes down, in my opinion, to recidivism. You could talk about all the bells and whistles all day long. It comes down to recidivism. Are you having an impact? And I'll just tell you this, it comes down to the numbers. I had my coordinator come up with these right before we came. We have 40 participants to date in the domestic violence court program. Already had 22 graduate from the program, which means they completed their counseling, their domestic violence counseling, which isn't easy. They were substance-free, and they complied with rules and conditions that we laid out for them. We currently have 17 participants in the program, and we've only had one that we've had to terminate, and we've only had one to reoffend. I wish both of those last numbers were zero, but it is what it is. So overall, I think just based on those numbers, having run this program now for about 15 months now since we started the program, I think we're having an impact. So I just wanted to let you all know what we're doing with that. Again, thank you all for the opportunity for letting us have these specialty court programs, because I think they're having an impact. So I'm proud of it. You all should be proud of it, and we're just going to keep going on and doing our best to tackle this problem that we have here in this community. Questions?
Thanks, Judge Waite. We appreciate, Judge Singer. I was thinking of Judge Justice Waite, because if you're young, of course, he's young too, and I say, man, you guys are both too young to be judges. So.
Well,
anyway.
yeah, but I'm taller, and that's.
Oh, this is true.
And I don't get to say that very often about too many
This is
people.
true.
So.
I'll have to make sure Judge Waite knows about that one.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So.
Yes, good point though.
Yes, thank you.
Any questions for Judge Singer? Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, Judge. 6B, 2023 legislative update. And Manager Foggin, you want
Thank
to
you.
start that off?
Yeah, so we just pretty much finished wrapping up the 2023 legislative session. We survived with a few bumps and bruises, and our day in and day out contact in Phoenix is we rely on the Dorn Policy Group. So Tom Dorn, Cole, his reliable partner, are here to give us the blow-by-blow in a very short format of how we did, and kind of share with you highlights from the 2023 session. So, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Foggin. Judge Waite? When did that happen?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, former city councilor.
Yeah.
David Waite.
Oh, that's
but yeah,
fantastic.
he's a judge now.
That's great to hear. Yep. Well, thank you very much for having Cole and I up here to give you an update and a wrap up. I wish I could say it was a wrap up of the legislative session. Do you want to do it, or do you want me to? Oh, if you can load it, that would be great. Oh, that's fine.
I was being optimistic. It's not over, but it's close.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, well, knowing that it's been a long meeting, and I can tell you're all tired, so I'll really kind of touch on the highlights of what we dealt with down at the state capitol. First of all, thank you for having us up here to give this legislative update. Moving on, that's just us and our firm. Okay, right here, just and please interrupt me if you have questions as we go. We're trying to highlight everything that impacted the whole agenda for the city of Kingman at the Capitol this year. As you know, the legislature is still the same as it was the last go-around. And what was important to note this time with the new governor being a Democrat, the Republican caucus is really hanging together. They said, you know, in the past, there's always been some moderates that broke and went with the Democrats to force an agenda. What we had this year very much is the Republicans said we all got to hang together. So the moderates are with the conservatives, and they're staying together, and that's why you saw, and you can move on, you saw 125 vetoes because we had so many bills that were 31, 29, and 1614, and that's why. And that combined with a rule that both Republican caucuses put in, and you may have heard about this, a majority of the majority. So 16 of the 31 House members needed to agree on something in order for it to go. And so it wasn't the majority of the body, it was the majority. Can you imagine the Democrats were livid about that? Because they had the votes, they had enough Republicans to pass something, yet the Republicans said, no, if it's not a majority of the majority, it's not going to go. And so, anyway, that led to some of the housing reforms that you may have heard about. They imploded based on that reason. Moving along, you know, look at all those bills that were introduced, thousands of them, 1,600. A little crazy. This is still a holdover from COVID, where instead of collaborating on the front end, you know, it would be nice if freshmen just showed up and listened. But some freshmen, you know, Representative Gillette was fine. He only had, you know, about 10 or so bills that he was the prime. But some of them show up and introduce 50 bills. And it's like, just show up and listen and learn, and then collaborate with your colleagues and learn how to get a bill passed. That usually is the better way, but instead, everybody introduces bills. And just so you know, the vetoes, I mean, she just vetoed basically everything. She blew past Napolitano's record, and that's more vetoes than Governor Ducey had in 8 years. So just to give you a sense of where we're at. Next, please. So I just want to show you the budget real quick. And just so you know, and especially, you know, it was helpful for us to sit here and listen to your discussion on the budget. Because, well, and there's many things that we can talk to you about later, but requests through the executive budget, there's different ways other than state revenues, state shared revenues and state appropriations from the legislature to get some funding to the city. And I think that's something we can explore in the future to talk about between now and the executive budget being presented. Agencies have to get their monies requests in by September 1st. You know, maybe the city of Kingman has something that we can push through a state agency as a budget request. So that's a different way to get funding.
Can you,
anyway,
I know you're in a hurry, but can you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about that? Those specific projects, are they shovel ready? How does that work?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Staley. It's usually programs, and so your city agencies probably work directly with people at the Department of Health Services, Department of Economic Security, Department of Transportation, obviously. And if they have that relationship, and if you find out, well, we could help you, Kingman, if we had more funding for that program. You know, so it's almost as if you're turning some of your employees into advocates from that end, and then we help work with the governor's office to get it in the budget for that agency. Because if you can get something in the governor's budget when they submit it to the governor's office on September 1st, and it works into the budget that's presented in January, you've kind of halfway done the work, because now it's in the governor's budget. Now you just got to get the legislators to make sure that that issue stays in the budget.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
As opposed to a bill that's a direct appropriation. There's different ways to skin the cat. That's all I'm saying. And that's something we haven't talked about before, but I think it's something we should explore based on what you were saying, because you were talking about your agencies.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, just so you know, really quick here, and we can move on, before we move on to this, just want to show you that I know the state shared revenue issue was a big deal, but all of us lobbyists that represent cities around the state, and, you know, from Winslow to Sarita to Yuma to Casa Grande, we all worked really hard on that issue when we were talking about the flat tax. Okay, well, let's get it up to 18%. And I think Mr. Foggen was alluding to, there was some discussions of actually, you know what, we need to bring that 18% down. We went too far when we did that with the cities. And so, but everybody locked arms and said, you know, no way, you're not. If anything, if you're gonna do something on the rental tax, which we all oppose, and hopefully the governor will veto, and we fully expect her to veto it because of the Prop 400 implosion, you don't settle for 18, you go to 20, you know, or 21. You go high and say, if you're going to do that, you're going to give us more state shared revenues. So these are all side conversations that Cole and I and Eric in our office were involved with all the other city lobbyists and the League of Cities people.
Tom?
Next.
Speaking of state
Yep.
shared revenues, have you heard any more about her funding being increased for outlying rural areas?
Well, that, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, that as revenues increase, you know, for the gas tax and everything, those will increase. And now with coming back from, you know, people are driving more,
Well, I'm talking about the percentage going back
Oh,
to
the percentage.
the rural communities, yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
oh,
obviously, if you spend more, you collect
yes,
more,
yes,
but
yeah.
that
You're
doesn't
talking
mean
about
that
the Casa
it
Grande
rolls
Accords and all
uphill from the great state of Maricopa.
Yeah, well, I'm not aware of anything specific at this time where there's a change in the formula.
Okay.
But I'm glad you brought that up because, and we'll get into it, you know, but the Proposition 400 in Maricopa County, you may all think, it's for Maricopa County. Remember, if Maricopa County isn't taxing itself and they have over 60% of the state population, that's going to impact every other county. And so there is discussion, while that, you may have read about it or heard about it, how it's imploded. Many people are talking about, let's just forget, because the legislature loves having the control of Maricopa County, and that goes back years ago when the legislature didn't like what was happening on the freeway system. It wasn't being built fast enough, and they put too much artwork. You know, build lanes, not artwork. And so they put that restriction in for Maricopa County to get a sales tax. They have to come back to the legislature to get approval. So there's talk about actually just putting a question out, forget you legislature, we're just gonna go right to the people and say, Maricopa County, everyone in the state, Maricopa County does not need to go to the legislature to impose a tax on itself. Or no county shall have to go to the legislature and impose a tax on itself. And let the state vote for it, and that's it. And then Maricopa County can then go to the ballot on their own and get it done. So much more to see on that. Next,
So,
please.
Vice Mayor, right now, no, there have not been any discussions.
Oh, did I not? Yeah, sometimes I talk too much and don't answer the question, so I apologize. Oh,
Yes,
go
the
ahead.
discussions have not happened yet, but if that's something that you want us to pursue further, we can absolutely do that for next
Well, I
legislative
just heard
session.
it might have been in the early stages, so.
Okay, we'll keep our
Yes.
ears out.
Yes, yeah. If there is a statewide discussion about a statewide tax for increase, because, you know, we haven't increased our gasoline tax. I'm not advocating for it, but we haven't since 1991. And that's when we added a penny for underground storage tank cleanup. So there is a desire from rural communities around the state. We need more money in rural Arizona. And so this is just a quick snapshot.
Hey,
We always show this.
Can I stop you real quick since we're on
Yeah, sorry.
the topic? We continue to get squeezed, right? We're getting less and less of our own money that we're paying in income tax or gas tax. And it's making it harder just to pay for the basics that a city needs. I know you're so plugged in, and you have, you know, great vision about how things are going to go. So do you ever see the rural areas being able to get a bigger piece of the pie? Arizona has a huge surplus. You know, the cities, especially small towns, we're struggling. Do you ever see them breaking off more and sending us what they used to so that our cities can thrive and we're not looking at ways to raise our sales tax or this and that, the things that we have failed to be able to do the last couple of years?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Staley, that's a really good question, and I'm not equipped to answer that right now, but I can see where, we have in our conference room, the world belongs to those that show up. And so if you're involved in the Capitol and you're involved in the discussions and you make your voice be heard and testify on behalf of issues, you can make things happen. I mean, this district, we have the majority leader in the House and the Senate, and that's a good thing. And I think there is this belief down at the Capitol, especially among legislators, rural legislators, we have got to make sure that we have a rural legislator in leadership. And so they stick together. They may elect someone from the east side of Phoenix or the west side of Phoenix, occasionally someone from Tucson, but they always make sure there's a rural legislator in the House and the Senate leadership, and that's important. So at the end of the day, I think the rural part of the state is becoming more populated also. So, I mean, it's, I think, impacting legislative districts and make sure that the right people are elected, make sure there's good rural legislators that are really engaged in the discussions and get the right committee chairmanships, that helps lead. And that's why I think rural Arizona was very successful in many areas, not just the transportation bill, but other areas.
Okay.
And we're holding the line on water.
Yeah.
I mean, if we didn't have people that were working hard for rural Arizona, we would get run over.
Okay, thank you.
So we just show you this because we want to show you how much, see all the red and orange? That's education funding. Whenever people tell you there's not enough money for education, show them that chart. Next, please. Transportation bills, real quick, just wanted to let you know some of the, we did talk about the RTAC bill. And as Mr. Foggin explained, it was Friday, everything was in there, and then the budget's released, and it's not there. And no one's more upset about that than us. And it is, there we are. And I was told by Senator Borelli, one of the issues was because we had they were local streets, but that isn't consistent. I know Representative Cobb, she always had an issue with that too. And however, there were about 30 projects that were local streets. A lot of it came down to who got these projects, these special projects, because look, there was 64 that went in, over $600 million. Remember, we had a $2.5 billion one-time surplus. So that's how they spent their money. President Peterson said, we're going to give $30 million to every senator, and we're going to give $20 million to every House member. And we're knowing that we have a Democrat governor, we're going to make sure that all the Republicans and half the Democrats are bought in. It's like, man, I got $20 million. I've never had any money to spend. And now all of a sudden these Democrats are now voting yes on the budget. And so wherever some people put their money together, and that's why we got the, if you have children, you're going to get a tax rebate, for anybody you filed. So there's a tax rebate, there's a lot of money that went into transportation. I know Representative Biasucci worked very hard on getting more money for rural maintenance of highways. And I know that he's contacted ADOT and is really pushing for a lot of the potholes and everything along Interstate 40 to be fixed. He's specifically asking them to do that. So, and so he's been helpful in those areas. We're asking the delegation and others in the rural lobbyists have all been working together trying to get more money out in the rural communities outside of what just happened here with the RTAC bill. A few other bills, but we can move on.
Well, actually, Tom, I do have a transportation.
Yeah.
Has there been any talk, I know it's been brought up before and it's been killed, but as far as EVs, and they're paying their fair share of using the highway? Because obviously they don't pay a gas tax.
So, Mayor, yes, that is, that's out there. It's interesting because we have Lucid and Nikola and others in Pinal County. So there's a desire to support those industries. And those bills have been quietly just kind of gone away. I mean, there has been discussion, but at the end of the day, making sure that natural gas vehicles or hydrogen or electric are paying more than they are now, because their weight is on the road and doing the damage to the road just as much as a gas-powered vehicle. You know, so that the industry, because I know they've been trying to grow the industry in the state, therefore they've tried to shy away from the legislature pushing back against it. In the meantime, we're short on revenues for our transportation, not just at the state level, but at the cities too. I mean, cities obviously are hurting. Good question. Water, real quick. Obviously, you know, there are several bills that we were in Cole. Just so you know, Cole is at every single meeting on behalf of the city of Kingman. You know, when we have, there's Department of Water Resources meetings all the time. We do a lot of collaboration with the Mojave County lobbyist. You know, so we're all on the same team. And I'll just, if you want to weigh in on some of these things, I'll please step up. The big item is the temporary non-expansion area that Representative Griffin, she pushed. And that, you know, remember, you know, Representative Cobb, she wanted to do the RMAs, and then Griffin killed it now, but with her gone. And then, so Mr. Biasucci and Mr. Borelli, they introduced more of an RMA, but it's called something different. And that is right there, and that didn't make it. But Griffin's bill was kind of it's an, you know, congratulations on the Wallapai INA, and that's a great thing. That's a victory for Kingman to have that legislation, I mean, to have that pass, and credit goes to Representative Cobb for that fully, for working that deal as appropriations chair and make sure it happened. But Griffin introduced this as more as a temporary version of an INA, so it ends. And it's just we're glad the governor vetoed that. Any question? Oh, and just so you know, WIFA, well, the governor put out that $1 billion for funding for you know, the desalinization plant and all these other things, that Hobbs quickly just went and said, no, we're pulling that back. And so they cut WIFA way back. And I don't know if Kingman has any submittals to the Water Infrastructure Financing Authority, but that's an opportunity too to get funding for your water infrastructure
We have not
projects.
applied for any WIFA loans.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, okay. Yeah, so WIFA loans and grants, that's going to be the big thing. So we're very engaged with WIFA, and the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority is, for those of you wondering, WIFA, what's that? So, so that is an avenue too, for additional funding for the city. And it will continue to be the go-to place for funding. Yes?
Tell us about the SB 1090, what happened with that, because that's the foreign farming that does impact our aquifer as well.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Staley, you mean the Fundamante legislation? Is that what you were talking about, 1090? Yeah. Go ahead.
Councilwoman, yeah, so 1090 was a bill introduced by Senator Anthony Kern. It was in response to a company called Fondamonte, which is in La Paz County. They went in and I don't know how much, I won't opine on what they do there, but they take a lot of water for farming and agriculture, and they're a Saudi-owned company, so basically Saudi Arabia ran out of water to grow alfalfa to feed their horses, and so they found a good place in the desert to stick their pumps in and drill and take out as much water as they wanted. The problem with this bill is it's probably unconstitutional on its face. It's too vague right now, the way that Senator Kern presented it, and it would trigger all sorts of, it would trigger a myriad of lawsuits. So I think we'll see state land is the one who negotiated those leases. And so I think we'll see a repeal of those leases. I don't know, you know, I think there will be some legislation sometime in the future, but it's gonna have to be a lot more tailored So that's kind of the issue. I think the will is there, and both sides see that there's a serious issue with groundwater that's not located in AMA because it's free reign, basically, for anyone who digs the deepest well. So that is something that I think will come back over and over, because that doesn't really solve the problem, what state land is doing. It kind of just, washes it away a little bit, but there's still opportunity for others to come in and take advantage of our rural groundwater.
Okay.
And thank you, Cole. And if I may add, just so you all know, we're in these meetings with, the cattlemen, the Farm Bureau, the home builders, the realtors, and then the cities and the counties, the governor's office, and like you hear about politics makes strange bedfellows. Well, that definitely happens all the time, and especially when it comes to water. And if we weren't in the room, if rural Arizona was not in the room, we'd be transferring all of our water to Maricopa, Pinal, Pima counties for houses and factories. And it's really, it's unbelievable, the intensity of the politics, especially with the home building community. And they're all friends of ours, but like that land, the zoning and all the things that were affordable housing that was happening. There was a deal. Senator Kaiser and the League of Cities worked out a deal that would have been helpful. Huh?
On the next slide.
The what? Oh, it's on the next slide. We'll go to the next slide. There we are. We had a deal on these bills, on well, it's actually on the next one, but this is homelessness. Let me go in order. Housing and homelessness, there was 100, I know, and Colleen always was telling us, like, housing solutions for Phoenix don't work for Kingman. And so we were always bringing that up and making sure that when these bills were up, it can't be a one-size-fits-all. But at the end of the day, there was $150 million that was put towards the Housing Trust Fund, and there was an additional $60 million for services for homeless people. And all of us rurals, we lobbied to make sure that some of that money was going to rural Arizona for the services. So of the $60 million, I believe $20 million is for rural, must be used outside of Pima and Maricopa counties. So that's a win for rural Arizona. But with regard to the, next please, land use bills, these are the ones that, so you've had enough, huh? Sorry. Yes, sir.
Go back, talk about 1131 rental tax.
Yeah, in the rental, on the previous bill, 1131, the rental tax. That is something that we fully expect the veto. And this is a situation where it's extremely frustrating. I mean, Mr. Foggin breathing down our neck constantly. We must not lose on the rental tax, because that's $300,000 to the city of Kingman. And thank God there's 70-plus cities that rely on the rental tax, so there's strength in numbers. But this is a case where the leadership was disconnected, in my opinion. There was such a push by the realtors and the home builders and other people to eliminate the rental tax. They didn't care, of the impact on the cities. It's just, we've got to get this. We're going to trade this for Maricopa County getting their transportation tax. If they want that, we've got to get rid of the rental tax. And we don't care how it impacts everybody else. So anybody who's a realtor in Kingman, I really encourage you to be involved with the state rental Realtors Association and say, hey, yeah, it sounds great, but my city will lose $300,000. So I don't think we, the realtors, should be pushing that at the state capitol. So I encourage you that know people in that space to do that. So that would just be a bad situation for so many communities. Land use bills, this is where I wanted to tell you that there was a deal, but that imploded. So I don't know if you had any questions on that legislation. Okay, next. Future issues, this is it, this is the end. Just wanted to let you know that, these are some of the major issues that are continuing probably next year down at the Capitol. Some other issues that are not specific to the city, but you never know, they may. artificial intelligence, cyber security, things like that are starting to, remember when Airbnb and Turo and Uber and those kind of disruptive technologies showed up in the legislature, and to your point, it's like, we haven't regulated this yet. and so I appreciate your earlier comment about liberty and freedom. But the legislature always reacts and they say, you know, we've got to do something here. We've got to regulate this industry that's showing up. So those are always future issues. And with regard to, as I already mentioned, with regard specifically to Kingman, I think getting ahead on the transportation funding, seeing what we can do with regard to state agency funding through that are going to be some of the major issues. And we have to be, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. So I think that with water, we just got to be there. And state shared revenues, I think, is out there. Because the more ideological the legislature becomes, the more they want to push things and then hold leverage over cities that don't comply. And we've seen that, and sometimes it'd be nice if we got back to just doing good policy for government as opposed to some other agendas that work their way in on both sides of the spectrum. So, be happy to answer any questions. Sorry if Cole and I went on too long, but we're here for you, and we try to talk to Mr. Foggin. Try every other week. We talk, and he keeps us in line and tells us what we should be working on. And rest assured that we are doing all of these things. We are in meetings. We sign in and support. We testify if necessary. But we also keep our eye on things like the WIFA and the state transportation system. And we work alongside all the other lobbies from the other rural communities. I just want you to know that. There's kind of a coalition of us that, we're rural, and we're working with them.
Great.
So,
Council, any more questions for Tom or Cole? Okay. Once again, thanks.
You're all hungry. All right.
Oh, we still have more meetings.
Oh, yeah, you got more? Hopefully there's some food in the back. Yeah.
But you guys are hungry, so that's good.
No, thank you very much. Great to see y'all.
Thanks
We'll see you at the
again.
league. So.
Item number 7 on our agenda, announcements by mayor, council members, and city manager. Mr. Foggin?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, our July 4th meeting is canceled due to July 4th. We are putting on our annual 4th of July fireworks, and we are excited to be able to do that. So invite the community to watch the fireworks show. We also have a Tri-City Council meeting for July 19th. That's in Lake Havasu City, so you want to add that to your calendar if you're interested in attending.
The date on that again?
Pardon me?
Date again?
July 19th. That's 10 o'clock in Lake Havasu. Generally, that is, I think they broadcast it.
Where is it going to be this? I know last time their city council chambers were still under construction, wasn't it? So
I would assume it's in their chambers, but that's where it's always been in the past.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And then looking forward, January 2024 is the men's league basketball program begins. Just want to put that out there. Just if you're looking for men's basketball. And that's all my announcements.
Thank you, Manager Foggin. Councilor Walker. Nothing. Councilor Ward.
I had a tour of the Goodyear plant out at the airport last week. I enjoyed it immensely. It's an amazing plant. I've been to a lot of Goodyear plants, never been in one that clean. And everything is so precise. It's all computer controlled. Beautiful plant.
And of course, Councilor Ward, just so everybody might know that you retired from Goodyear.
I did retire from
you have lots
Goodyear.
of knowledge as far as Goodyear plants.
Yes, but I'd never seen anything like that. And
Right.
I've been at a lot of tire plants and a lot of belt plants, but that's an animal all its own.
It's a special. We are glad that business is in our city. So thank you. Councilor Staley. Councilor Pat.
Nothing tonight.
Vice Mayor.
Just a couple of things. I attended the downtown Kingman Beale Streetscape meeting, like the pre-construction meeting for businesses in the downtown area. So Very well attended. There was a lot of positive comments. I know Counselor Staley was there, the mayor was there.
Counselor Ward?
Counselor Ward was there. That's right, you were in front of me. So there's a lot of information out there about the construction and the timeline, and I encourage the public to go and look into that on our website. And then the last thing was I had a meeting with Representative John Gillette on the legislature and all things going on there. So I'm looking forward to meeting with him again, just to see how we can become more effective as a city and who we need to meet with and get in their ear and just see how we can put Kingman in for more funding. So.
Okay. And Carl, just so you know, at that meeting that we went to, we didn't talk, the four of us, just so you know. Okay.
We all sat in separate.
Well, thank you, Vice Mayor. Last Monday, so a little over a week ago, I was able to present the Women's Veterans Proclamation over at our Veterans Memorial over at Railroad Park. And so the women's veterans, we appreciate their sacrifice and service in our country also, and of course that continued service, and not just them, but all our veterans and armed service personnel. Then last week, also of notoriety, was Wednesday and Friday was their closing days for two different groups, but part of the same program. And the reason it's important to notice, it was through MSTEP program, so through Bob DeVries and others that work for that program. They actually were able to bring, because of how well that program is going, they were able to invite counselor, or they were supervisors. One was supervisor from another county up in Northern California, right, Ron?
They were from all over the country.
Minnesota, Northern California,
Yeah, and
Oregon.
it was just folks that wanted to learn more about programs and what successes they could partner, or what they could learn from our program.
What's working here in Kingman. So, you know, that was a great thing. I was able to just welcome them on Wednesday morning and on Friday morning, those two different groups, and just welcome them to Kingman. They all had great positive things to say about our community and their stays here. So we appreciate all the good that is being done in our community. And as always, thanks to all our community members and the service they give to one another. And that's all I have.
Can I have a go back?
Yes, Councilor Staley.
I just realized we weren't going to have another meeting in July, so I did want to bring up the 50th commemoration of the Doxel explosion. And the Kingman Fire Department's holding an event on Friday, July 7th at 2 p.m. at Lee Williams in order to commemorate those firemen that were lost, hard to believe, almost 50 years ago. And they are also accepting donations for any businesses that want to help pay for that event.
Thank you, Councilor Staley. That is an important event for everybody to know about. Moving on, item number 8, council requests for future reports and updates. Council?
I have two.
Councilor Staley?
I would like to get some information in the very near future about the crimes that are happening at our trailheads. And parks. Sorry, I understand that several cars were broken into at Centennial Park last week, and people's purses were stolen, and it was right in broad daylight. So it was the pickleballers. They were out playing, and their windows got smashed. And then I know of a catalytic converter that was removed at Beale Springs Trailhead. And then there's other cars being broken into at White Cliffs and Beale Loop. So we have spent a lot of money to improve our quality of life and to offer these pickleball leagues and the trails. And now as people are recreating, their cars are being broken into. I think we need to take some steps to try to mitigate that. And then my other request is to have HR put together a policy for the council in regards to the annual performance reviews of the city manager, the city magistrate, and the city attorney. We don't have a process currently in place nor any kind of trigger from HR to come to the city, to the council and say, it's time, you need to do this review and the form and how we would like to do that. I think it would be nice to have a pre-meeting, a pre-executive session meeting to come together as council to discuss the process, and then a second one to deliver those performance reviews. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I'd like it to at least be a policy and something in place so that HR will come to us every year and help us get those completed on time.
Anybody else?
I just have a question of the
Vice Mayor?
clerk. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm fine. I would like to see a more current Rancho update, and probably maybe monthly with everything that's going on with it.
The TI.
The TI. I just think that's a big project, and I think the community's interested in knowing what's going on. I think so much has gone on. I don't know if all of us know what's going on. We got newer council members. I think we just need to have keep up to date on that. And then my second deal is I would like to discuss bed tax in the future, near future.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
So I just had a question, Clerk Meredith. We used to get in our agenda, we used to have dates of significance on our agenda, like the upcoming council dates, special events, things like that. They not on our agenda? Am I missing something?
I think you're referring to the weekly update that I provided.
I knew I saw them somewhere. Okay, perfect. Then never mind.
And then just one thing, actually, Councilor Sigley touched on it as far as what's going on with our parks. Possible vandalism update, because I know we've been having some problems with vandalism too at our parks. So, and maybe, I know we've talked about for example, I live close to the Wallach Ranch Park, and I know that has been announced in the past that park oftentimes has more damage to it because of its location. And
So is that a request for vandalism report on parks?
well, just an ad to dovetail on to Councilor Saley's, just a sort of an update of how we're looking there, how we're doing. Thank you. That's it. Can we have council, anyway, item number 9, executive session. 9A, city magistrate contract renewal. The council may go into executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A1 for the city magistrate's contract renewal, discussion and possible action. Can we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
And we have
Second.
Carl?
Make sure we know specifically who's doing it and who's.
Correct. So who made the motion?
I made the motion to
Okay,
go into
and
executive
Vice
session.
Mayor made the second.
Second.
Okay.
And could I just say one thing with the motions, why don't we make sure we take our time? I mean, I know sometimes we talk over each other a little bit, but just make sure we're clear who's making the motion and who's making the second. So we just,
Okay.
just for Annie.
We don't want to make any.
I think we're too fast for mute, Carl.
Well, that's true too.
And I would assume, Clerk Meredith, that we're going to have the executive session here, and so if we could ask everybody to leave and have a good evening. You're more than welcome to stick around and come and visit afterwards as we finish the meeting, but we're just going to adjourn anyway. So, thanks again.
looks like.
We'll come to the 1:30. Okay, or a little bit later, yeah. Great. Great, thank you, Clerk Meredith. We are back from executive session, and once again, welcome everybody that has stuck around. We need a motion.
I'll make a motion that,
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve Judge Singer's contract with the modification.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, because of that, we are adjourned officially. Thank you.